This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Weapons of Class 4 and lower have been authorized for use during the purge. All other weapons are restricted. Government officials of ranking 10 have been granted immunity from the purge and shall not be harmed. Commencing at the siren, any and all crime, including murder, will be legal for 12 continuous hours. Police, fire, and emergency medical services will be unavailable until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when the purge concludes. Blessed be our new founding fathers and America, a nation reborn. May God be with you all.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
What is America? America is, we've been told, the land of the free. So tell me then, what is more American than the purge? Nothing. The purge is the ultimate night of freedom. On purge night, you're free to do whatever you want. With no law, no person, no governing body dictating your behavior. On purge night, America lives up to its promise. So how will you use this freedom? Will you right some wrongs? Will you heal? Will you hurt? Will you give life? Will you take life? Just don't let yourself or your country down. The purge is America. So be an American and purge.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bishop, and with me today for the 31 Days of Horror. My God, you've all been waiting for this for so long, including us.
Yes, we have.
Sam Stepanenko.
I feel very ghoulish.
All right.
Well, look at me. Gaunt, pale. I'm ghoulish.
Sure you are. You're Trish Coughlin.
Yeah. I guess you could be like ghoulish, but like you're now part of like that horror movie where like, is the monster really the monster or is it the humans?
I did watch some of those this year.
And I'd like to thank you too for helping me bring up the Jeff crate.
That was really heavy.
Yeah.
My back still hurts.
Yeah, how such a skinny guy can be so heavy.
You have to lift with your legs.
It was the crate. It was the crate.
This is the crate. Well, yeah, that's
it's
true.
It's awkward. It's hard to get a really good angle to like.
And those stairs are really steep. You have weird basement stairs.
I don't know what's with you in the stairs, because you're the only one who has a problem with it. I think you just have steep feet.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think the stairs are there to prevent escape, really. So.
Yeah, but you know what? The graphics for this episode are by Jeff Robertson, who we've now let out of the crate, and I think he's done such a good job, I won't put him back in.
Yay!
Well, where am I?
Okay,
I'm sorry about the air hole, by the way, that when it went into your head.
You just allowed it to express its creativity for the graphics for this week's episode.
I think so. So from now on, I think we're going to let him... in fact, I think I'll let him go home, because his wife is a little worried.
The constant text messages are probably getting a little annoying.
Yeah,
Not just that, but the police are going to come by at any moment.
I feel like I was in the movie The Loved Ones.
Oh, nice.
Excellent.
Great pull.
Great pull.
See, the Japanning did some good. So yeah, we got an extra body in here for 31 Days of Horror. We did this last year and the year before that. I've been doing 31 Days of Horror for about 15 years or so, with maybe a year or two off for good behavior when I didn't have a blog or a source to share it and I just got tired of doing it. But for the most part, I've done it a lot of times, and you guys joined me a couple years ago in doing this, and since we were all doing it, we decided to do a podcast about it. But my rules are a little bit different. It's not just watch a horror movie a day in October, because that's easy. You got to watch a horror movie a day you've never seen before for every day of October. And that's what we did this month, and we're going to talk about it. It's always interesting to see what we come up with, those hidden gems, those bigger blockbusters, and those not so shiny rocks.
I had a few of those.
Everybody does.
We'll see. Everybody's got them. That's the thing with horror. It's a dubious genre at times.
And as I imagine, we will learn one person's shiny rock is another person's. I hated that movie.
I think we learned that 2 weeks ago when we covered Chud.
Yes.
That's very true. People did not like that movie.
Yeah. All right, well, let's dive into 31 Days of Horror. And just before we get into this, I do want to mention we are brand new on Radio Public. We're now streaming on Radio Public, and we urge all you Android and iTunes users to switch over to that. It's available on iOS and Android. And Radio Public, unlike a lot of other podcast providers, pays out to their podcasts by you just listening to the episodes. So by you just doing what you would normally do by listening to this show, you're helping us out.
We get coffee money.
Yeah, that's right. We get a little bit of coffee money. And
We could do laundry.
you guys are getting nothing for coffee or laundry because it's going to go all back into the hosting fees.
Okay.
Well, damn.
Well, then we are not giving you that. Now I'm not giving you that money for hosting fees. I'm still using it for laundry.
Okay. Fair. Whatever you want to do with your spare change.
Okay.
That is all right by me. Help out the show by switching over to Radio Public. We're still available on all the other podcast providers, so if you don't want to make the switch, it's okay. You can still listen to us in a lot of different places.
We'll still love you. A little less, but we'll still love you.
Like we'll know whether or not they're who's actually listening on Radio Public or not, but we'll have our suspicions.
That's all that high-tech spaceship gadget stuff we've got.
Yep.
Actually, I was thinking more of like a murder mystery where we invite them. You may wonder why we've invited you here to this house. In this room is a person who is listening to the podcast. I don't know what accent that is.
It was kind of this weird French. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Spanish, French,
It was a
Italian,
French
French.
It's like
We got a long way to go. I hope your tongue start working.
I was trying Belgian, and I did grow this mustache for that, but I don't know why it's not working.
It's like
Well,
a
that's very
mid-90s
Movember.
generic immigrant accent.
Oh, God. Okay, so I went racist. Oh, no.
Terrible. Terrible.
It's not what I meant.
Okay, what we're going to do here, we're going to revolve around the room. We're going to do our first week, our first 8, and then we will close out with our second 8. So we'll go 1 through 8, and then 9 through 16, and then next week will be part 2, and we will do the rest of the month of October. Now, I started out really strong this month. Maybe too strong. Maybe a wee bit too strong. I started out with Annihilation from 2018 from writer-director Alex Garland. This is his follow-up to Ex Machina, and we speak about voices in horror. While this has definitely some horror elements, he's definitely entrenching himself into the sci-fi side of things, and I think he's doing a hell of a job as one of the new voices of science fiction, and I can't wait to see what he's got next, because man, the stuff he comes up with is really creative, and in this case pretty thoughtful and highbrow.
Do you think that I know that Annihilation is based on a book trilogy? Do you think
It's based on a book. I'm not sure. Well, probably not, considering the movie didn't do too well theatrically, but I guess
The ending.
it depends on how well it did on Netflix, because it was picked up for international distribution for Netflix. It just wasn't domestically here in North America. So we'll see. I mean, it's possible. if Netflix did pretty good numbers, maybe Netflix will just finance the second one, and we know they're willing to spend some decent coin on some of their originals now.
Absolutely.
Very possible. It starred Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson, Benedict Wong,
Yes.
and Oscar Isaac, who ironically was filming this at the same time he was filming Last Jedi. Literally in the same studio lot, he was using the same trailer. So some days he was filming both movies at the same time. Like he'd go shoot Star Wars and then go do a quick wardrobe change and go over to Annihilation or vice versa. So that's kind of cool.
That's commitment to your craft.
It's a good thing that he's not a method actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's not in this a whole lot, but he's a very important character because he's like a soldier character, and he's gone missing. He's the husband of Natalie Portman, who's gone looking for him. She's a scientist, and with a bunch of other people go into this zone. She's basically looking for her husband, who went into this zone and is keeping that information private. I think there's only one other person who knows that, and that's Jennifer Jason Leigh. But this zone, when I watch this, I'm like, this zone, it mixes the normal worlds in a weird way, at least the organics, and there's kind of like a crossbreeding that's happening within plants and animals in impossible ways. What I came out with watching this movie was like, wow, this is beautifully horrific at the same time. There is a lot of nightmare fuel, but it's oddly entrancing.
Oh, it's beautifully shot, and it's so well paced where like you feel like you're experiencing all of it as they are, like it's unfolding in the same way. So that's kind of nice. You're never ahead of this movie. It's great.
No, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. It's not overly predictable. It's got a slower, deliberate pace, but it doesn't take away from the movie. And, I mean, it goes into some strange territory in the back end of that movie. I don't think that takes away from the movie either. And the thought that this zone could eventually overtake the Earth is frightening. But oddly, it's like, you know, we could do with something new.
Right? Oddly, at the same time, I'm like going, I came up with a new narrative where I'm like, I just want to watch a movie where somebody is going there to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm the only one who can help. But I've seen what humans are like. I'm not on board.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I kind of dig the alligator sharks and the plant humans that don't do anything and just standing there oddly, creepily in their human form plant thing. That was kind of cool.
Well, the exploding into a fungus on the wall.
Yeah. That was probably one of the grosser things.
Yeah. And the
but
video
still was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. Check out that one. Started out so strong for me. Like, that was easily the best of the week for me right out of the gates. And it could even be, it's in the running for best of the month.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I remember texting Sam, I'm like, I think I started too big.
Yes. I think I peaked on my first movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think I peaked. And then the only way to get it through this, I'm like, I need something really nasty and trashy.
Like a palate cleanser.
Oh, yeah.
I need a palate cleanser, so I just
terrible.
wanted something really gritty and mean-spirited.
And low budget.
And low budget. And Terrifier from 2017 was the perfect movie to cleanse the palate with.
You know, I only watched that movie a couple months ago when I was visiting Salem with my wife, and it's not good.
I will disagree with you.
I'm going to disagree with him as well. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It felt like an off-the-rack 80s movie, like a direct-to-video off-the-rack kind of thing. This dirty, gringy, low-budget kind of movie that's really mean-spirited.
I should amend. I wouldn't say it's not good. I just didn't think it was worth all of the hype that it had gotten.
Okay.
Only because of Art the Clown, because he could be very much the next iconic slasher killer if handled right.
I really liked Art the Clown. It was a different person under the makeup this go around. Art the Clown had made a previous appearance in an anthology called All Hallows Eve that was also by writer-director Damien Leon. And it was portrayed by somebody else, but still definitely done. And I really like Art the Clown. He's kind of getting up there in my mind with Pennywise.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if I like the supernatural twist at the end.
I was going to mention that because I was thinking about that, and I'm like, it almost feels like it tested really well with audiences, and they're going to want more, so they tacked on this because that ending. I mean, even the set felt cheap and tacked on, right? I mean, it felt like they were in somebody's basement, not an actual morgue.
Like, are you talking about the ending / also the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, no, that was, I think, maybe the main detractor for the movie for me as well.
I would have to say that's the only flaw in it, and I think it's because they originally had Art dead, and then they went, oh, wait a minute, audience really like Art. We have to figure a way to bring him back, and they really kind of just pasted it in. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, and I can tell, like, the director really likes this character, and he's expanded on the ideas from his short film. I did watch a short film just to kind of see where the genesis of this character was from, and there are several sequences in there that's in the film that are from the short. And Damien Leon's also a special effects guy, so he did a lot of the makeup effects on this. Movie was actually presented by Dark Age Cinema and Dread Central, so this was actually a feature funded by a horror website. Yeah. The acting in this movie is a bit dodgy at times, but it just kind of adds to that gritty nature of the film that I kind of enjoyed. But overall, like, it was the palate cleanser I needed. Easily the goriest thing I saw all month long.
I think it might have been for me as well. Yeah, this is, I think, the only spot where we doubled up, because I was not skipping this one this year.
Yeah, Sam and I were having a bit of a passive Twitter war.
Yes.
In a way, it was the Cold War of 31 Days of Horror, where we were both watching movies and trying to avoid each other, and we'd curse each other when somebody would get to something before the other. And early on, I was like pissing Sam off, and then later on, Sam was getting to things like, damn it.
Yeah, but so you finished off with Wilding, which was one of the ones on my list for this year, and I'm like, fuck. That was the one I was going to watch for the 31st day, and I ended up watching something else, but we'll get to that.
We'll get there in episode 2. My third movie, I'd been chomping at the bit even last year for this because I really like the franchise, but I don't have to like Victor Salva that much because we won't get into that controversy. But this is by writer-director Victor Salva, Jeepers Creepers number 3. You know, like, I really like this franchise, and I think it'd been sitting on the shelf a wee bit too long, and in a way this kind of just ignores what came before. You could tell it didn't have the same kind of budget that Jeepers Creepers 2 had.
Like, this is the one that came out within the past year.
Yeah, it was from 2017. You know, I still really enjoy, I think he's one of the more creative movie monsters. You know, he's feeds, I think he
every
feeds
13?
I think it's longer than that.
30?
23 years. Okay. Every 23 years he comes out to feed for 23 days in this endless cycle, and he replaces body parts and all sorts of stuff. Like, he, at one point in the previous movie, most of his head's destroyed, and he just kills somebody else, sticks his head in his stomach, and it rises up and replaces his old head, and like, he's really interesting, and part of me, I think, wanted more about how this creature worked and why it did the way it did, and unfortunately it didn't deliver in that regard, but it felt a lot like the first movie in a lot of ways. So I liked it, but it didn't forward the franchise in any way, shape, or form, and that bugged me a bit. And the whole 23-year thing really writes you into a hole a bit, because at some point you either got to go backwards or forwards.
Yeah.
And I think this one took place around the same time as the second movie, because there is a school bus they mentioned, which is the second movie. So I'm not sure exactly what was happening, but it runs out of time in this one, so it doesn't quite mesh with how number 2 ended.
You kind of just said that you're like, you didn't feel furthered in any way or did anything kind of new with it. So you know what? Even if we're not talking about the controversy, hand it off to somebody, because it's obvious he doesn't know the way forward.
Well, I think it was a case of he needed to reintroduce it because it had been sitting on the shelf for so long. But
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things
maybe that's
where,
the best way to go forward, is to hand it off to somebody else.
Like, if people were not going to see it because of all of the controversy, the people who did decide to see it anyway, it's not even like it's good to make up for the fact that you're seeing it anyway. I mean, if you're going to see it anyway, it should be something that's really great and worth standing on its own merit, but it doesn't really sound like it is.
if it's not being forward by the third film, like it's starting to fail, and maybe it's either time to close the doors or hand it off. But regardless, it's kind of soured my thoughts about the franchise in general. Moving on, I definitely had a much better experience with, like, I didn't think Jeepers Creepers was terrible. It just was samey.
It just need more.
Same.
It had something to do. You could have done something with it.
At some point, you have to have your aliens from Alien. You know, you need that thing to forward the franchise. For number 4, I went with Ty West's The Innkeepers from 2011. I like to describe this as it's a nice low-budget ghost movie, and I like to describe it as Clerks meets The Conjuring. Really, really dug this movie. It was low budget. This inn is kind of on its last week. The owners have gone away. It's just a couple of people left on the final week of this place being opened before it's sold off or whatever. And Kelly McGillis is playing an actress that's staying there. Another person, elderly person, comes because of the memories he's had with his wife. And he decides this is the best memory he had with his wife, and he's going to end his life there. And meanwhile, like, in the quiet moments, these two innkeeper clerks are going ghost hunting. They've been meaning to do this for a while, and they're going ghost hunting.
It's their last chance.
This last chance. The one guy leading the charge winds up being so skittish and afraid of even the littlest things, he backs out really quickly and even runs off on her. And she's actually finding stuff, or at least convincing herself she's finding stuff, and oddly enough is freaking herself out, but she's brave enough to keep going forward. For as fun as this movie is, it has a really tragic ending. It is a bit of a bummer, but I highly recommend this movie. It's worth checking out for sure.
Just for the record, I think that more horror should end on bummer endings because they're fucking horror.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are right.
I agree.
Yeah, especially if you've got a lighter tone through most of the movie, too. Like, it's... Yeah, you can call this a horror comedy, but I put the horror above the comedy in this movie.
And it shows how much you can do with so little, and just at the end, like you say, the bummer endings, the ones that the movies I remember the most are the ones where I just feel that gut punch, and I'm like, oh wait, it was a horror. No.
I had quite a few of those this year, and I was really pleased. I can't say I love that type of ending, but I always find them a little more satisfying than the final girl, final guy type of ending.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, the only other instance where that wouldn't be the case, where I really appreciate like the good ending, is when it's a movie that everything is going wrong, and then in like the third act there's a character who rises up who you would never expect, like in Your Next, where it's like the surprise triumph.
Yeah, Your Next is a great example of where that works really, really well.
But yeah, in general, I do really think that with a lot of horror movies, it's kind of like there's this whole principle with songwriting, where people say that with a songs that end on a fade out continue in the person's mind longer than ones that end with an abrupt ending. I feel like it's similar with horror.
Yeah. That's a good analogy.
Number 5. Okay, this was probably one of the biggest horror movies of 2018. A Quiet Place.
Ooh,
nice.
I can't wait to hear what you thought.
Yeah, screenplay and director was John Krasinski, who's also starred in this movie. I really like this. I made just a few 4 words comments about the movie, and I said simple, creative, tense, and gripping. And really, really enjoyed the movie. It's this interesting way to tell a monster movie story and keep a very personal story happening within the film. Really, really enjoyed it. I don't know if I want to see more of the world, but I want to see more of what Krasinski can do as a writer-director, because for this guy who comes from the comedy world and is now made a horror movie and playing Jack Ryan, you know, he's shaken up his career, and it's fascinating to see where that's going to go next.
You know, and I feel like that movie really marked a shift in Hollywood in some ways, because it was originally developed at one point. It was supposed to be a Cloverfield movie. And there was a little period of time.
Overlord, that's opening this month, was also considered.
It was also supposed to be Cloverfield. There was a brief period of time where, obviously with 10 Cloverfield Lane, that started off as a different movie that they changed some things to make a Cloverfield movie, and the same with the Cloverfield Paradox. And with the Cloverfield paradox, the things that they changed, like they realized maybe too late in the game that it didn't work quite as well as they had hoped it would. And so with A Quiet Place, that movie was supposed to have been a Cloverfield movie at one point, but then they thought that it was strong enough that maybe it should exist on its own merit, which is a really interesting shift, because now, as you mentioned with Overlord, that is a movie that is going to stand on its own merit and won't be tied to a franchise, and they're maybe realizing that because of the Cloverfield paradox, the way to go is not to try franchising original science fiction movies, but making original science fiction horror movies that could stand on their own.
Oh, well, and horror in general is starting to do so much better theatrically, dollar-wise.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're getting certain breakout movies, but it's nice to see that they can draw. An R-rated horror movie can draw. So I'm really looking forward to the next few years, because we're still in that early part of that phase, and horror ebbs and flows and has its peaks and valleys, but we're starting to head to a peak, but I don't think we've peaked yet. So this is just one of those breakout movies early in that genre. Unfortunately, we're going to get a lot of pretenders along the way, but
and that's the cycle. But I like the fact, I mean, you saw it last year with Get Out. They're allowing these writer-directors to be creative, and they're saying, well, they're not saying, we want another Friday the 13th, or we want another Halloween, we want another Get Out. We're not seeing as much of that as we used to.
The audience is craving original horror. It follows. Don't breathe. But they're showing that franchises still have life, too. Halloween opened to buco box office. So
I actually just heard the other day that Halloween is now officially the biggest slasher movie ever made.
There you go.
Just past Scream.
All right.
Yes.
Well,
from what I've heard, it's fairly deserving of it, so I haven't seen it yet.
There's one more thing. When you're talking about like the horror movies and the new voices and being creative about this, when you talk about A Quiet Place, there's so many more that are coming up with a very emotional core.
Yeah.
That makes you really invested in the story.
Like I remember reading in interviews that John Krasinski was saying that he's not even necessarily the biggest horror fan, but what really drew him to the script and the direction that he came from making the movie was like the fear you have being a new parent and the fear of whether or not your children are safe, and bringing it from that kind of angle really grounded the whole movie in a really, really good way.
Yeah. Okay, my number 6 is another Blumhouse movie called Truth or Dare. Initially, I went into this thinking, hey, Blumhouse has got a good track record lately. This is one of those ones that I'm okay that I don't see another one. Definitely wasn't one of my favorites.
I had it confused because you said there's another one with this name, and I thought it was
there's
other
a whole
one you
bunch
were
called
talking about.
Truth or Dare. This is a screenplay and directed by Jeff Wadlow. Story screenplay was also by Michael Rees and Gillian Jacobs and Chris Roach.
That's not the same Gillian Jacobs from
Community,
is it?
Maybe.
I'm looking this up right
Maybe.
now.
Go ahead, look it up while I'm talking about it. Honestly, I said I made a comment and I'm like, it's trying to capitalize on It Follows when we talk about movies that are trying to follow a trend. This one is one of those movies. I actually saw a trailer at another movie recently that looked a lot like The Autopsy
of Jane
Doe that I watched last year, and it looked an awful lot like that, just more jump scary, and I'm like, that just was offensive to me because that was such a good movie. And this one, not so great. I mean, basic concept is this group of spring breakers have played a game of Truth or Dare with a stranger in this abandoned building, which apparently a demon had been raised in there in a flashback, and during another game of Truth or Dare, and this game has been propagated by one of the original victims of the game, or the last set of victims of the game, and it's being propagated by it's being spread out to another group, and it doesn't work like the traditional game because it follows the rules that the first group did, and they changed it slightly where you can only say truth 3 times before you're forced into a dare. And initially it starts off kind of calm and escalates to the point of like, okay, you gotta hurt somebody or kill this person, and they get these weird rictus grins, the Willem Dafoe grin.
Yeah, I was
Ooh.
actually, when I saw the trailers for that, I was like, what is this? Black Hole Sun, the music video, the movie?
Nice.
I would have preferred the music video. It was okay, but I've said this before. Is okay worth your time? No, it's not.
Different Gillian Jacobs, by the way.
Is it? Okay.
So,
Okay.
well, thank goodness.
She's off the hook.
Yeah.
Nice.
Unfortunately, with horror, they can't all be gems.
No,
it really is
true.
the challenge. And
But that is, half the fun is talking about them, regardless of whether you like them.
exactly. And yeah, I'm part of a horror group on Facebook that we got invited to. But yeah, the Truth or Dare was getting hacked on pretty hard in there. I'm like, well, it was on my maybe list. Now it's on my no list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think out of the couple that Blumhouse put out in a similar time, I heard much better things about Happy Death Day, which I wanted to see as part of my list this year, but I did not.
It
There's a whole
was
story
on my
there.
list, but I did not get to it.
I did it last year. I went to the theaters. It's an enjoyable romp. I liked it.
All I know is that it has a sequel coming out, and it has a great title. It's Happy Death Day to You.
Yeah, I've seen
not
the
enough
trailer
of that
for
horror
it,
sequels
and
these days.
it looks great. It looks crazy. This wonderful horror comedy. So quite looking forward to seeing that.
The lead
franchise
actress
going.
in it is great.
Yeah, boy, she got some acting chops, and to come off as that bitchy girl and still pull off some of that comedy. I'm really enjoying her. Number 7 was 1978 movie The Fury by Brian De Palma. This one's a really strange one. A former CIA guy, his son has these telekinetic abilities and has been taken by a terrorist group to be used. And at the time, like, the son feels fairly innocuous and comfortable with some of his abilities, and his dad's a good father. But when he's taken, Dad goes looking for him, and over a long period of time, this movie happens over a long period of time, and he finds another talented psychic and telekinetic to help him in his search for his son, who's turned out to be a real scumbag. This terrorist group is treating him really well, giving him hookers and all sorts of things, and he's gotten all up in his head.
Well, that's the enticement.
Yeah.
That's when people are going to go like to Al Qaeda, they're like, oh, we'll give you women and stuff, and like you'll be in charge and everything will be happy. Like that's how they get people.
Yeah, this is kind of like Scanners meets Jack Ryan in a way.
It almost, the way you describe it almost sounds like it's also kind of Firestarter-ish.
Yeah, yeah, that too. It goes into some weird territory, and I can't say the narrative is really strong. There are some really interesting sequences of horror. I wouldn't call this a strict horror per se, because it's more of a thriller, but there are definitely some moments of horror in this film that could be pretty tragic at times. And after watching this, I'm like, man, this may not be the best of execution, but probably the best they could have done in 78, and might be ripe for a remake. So we maybe down the road we'll talk about this again, because there are definitely some elements in here, but overall, like, this was meh. Like, some great ideas, some not so great execution. At times it gets a bit nauseating.
It's quite De Palma.
Yeah, there's just like, it just goes
It's
on.
early
and
De Palma
on.
too, so
Yeah. So it's really long
yeah.
for what it is. And there's a lot of, just a lot of dramatic moments that are just like, come on, let's get on with it already. And number 8 to round out my first week here is Baskin, which also begins a disturbing trend of cult movies. Not cult as in like the Army of Darkness type of cult movie, but movies about cults. That was
the best kind.
That was the theme that kind of surfaced this year when we do these 31 Days of Horror. Sometimes weird trends pop up that are unintentional.
I have a couple, yeah.
This
Yeah.
was where
Me
I
too,
just
actually.
kept unintentionally watching movies about cults. And it starts with Baskin. Baskin was a Turkish movie from 2015 by writer-director Kaan Evernal. Yeah,
Me
these
too.
4 policemen were called to this house to discover this mass carnage that has happened already in this house. And it results in this descent into madness and possibly a descent into hell itself. It's an interesting movie. I also had an arduous journey watching this movie because I watched it on Amazon Prime Canada, and I gave them shit for this because the subtitles were out of sync with the fucking movie. Not my first foray into an Amazon Prime fuck up, by the way. We'll get to another one later on in 31 Days of Horror, resulting in another nasty tweet to them. When you're getting a paid service, you expect better. But I'm loving some of the Amazon Prime originals, so don't get me wrong. Like, they're not a completely... You can tell they're in the early days of their service, and they're not as quite solid as Netflix is now. But when I first signed up for Netflix, they weren't without their problems as well. Yeah. So this was one of those arduous journeys, but I really wanted to watch this movie, and I really dug it. Like, I don't know if I'd want to watch it again, because there's some horrific moments of torture in there. I mean, they're not as bad as like a Saw movie, but it gets under your skin. This one.
I think the thing with Saw movies is they're so camp and they're so over the top that it doesn't register the same as watching a movie where like Martyrs, where there's a lot of torture but the context is different and it feels more real.
Yeah, and I think that's where Terrifier succeeds, at least for me, maybe not for you, but because of the camp and the horror in that movie and the gore. Whereas this one, it's just a dark, disturbing movie, and at times really gets into your head. It's a bit of a mindfuck as well. So I do recommend this movie, but with the caveat, it's going to be a bit of a uncomfortable watch and maybe a little bit of nightmare fuel, but a really strong movie. I really enjoyed it. So that was my first week.
Well, I remember you telling me about that one. That was the one I told you. I'm like, I want to do it, but I'm too afraid because like I saw the trailer and I just felt nauseous.
Oh, this was not anywhere close to being as hard to watch as Martyrs, so
which we are going to do, and I will do it for the podcast.
Martyrs is great. I've heard not so much about the remake.
Yeah, I haven't seen the remake.
Yeah, we'll cover it down the road at some point, but I didn't think the American studios were going to do Martyrs as good as the French did.
Yeah, especially when I think the guy who directed the American one, I read an interview clip where he said, I really wanted to remake it. I thought the first one was great, but I also thought the ending was a bit of a downer, and we wanted to change that.
A bit of it.
I was like, what?
Oh, you know what? We're going to talk about that type of American remake when we get into the second half, because I have one of those movies like that too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right, well... Jeff, how about we get into your first week here?
Sorry, I've been really excited to talk about some of these movies. So I actually feel like I started off my 31 Days of Horror on a good note to start on, because I did not think it was a great movie. It was 1981's Nightmare, or the better European title, Nightmare in a Damaged Brain. It is a video nasty. Yeah, it's a great title. It's one of the video nasties. Like, over the past year and a half or so, I've kind of made it my goal to slowly make my way through all of the video nasties, just because it's something that I feel like is worth doing. But there's a lot of not very good movies in there. Yeah, basically Nightmare was directed by a man who primarily had directed pornography, who wanted to make the jump into horror films. The beginning is kind of interesting. The middle is not as interesting. The end is okay. The end, the killer wears I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any vintage mask enthusiasts out there, but I believe the killer wears a Don Post Mr. Cool mask, which is like a cool black man mask, as the killer at the end. Mm-hmm. But really, honestly, the most interesting part of the movie is that in real life, one of the distributors was jailed for 18 months because he refused to edit any of the footage before releasing the movie. He was arrested for obscenity.
Oh, wow.
He was in jail for a year and a half. That's the most interesting trivia about that movie. But all in all, it was only okay. Easily forgettable.
Video nasties, probably the best you could hope for is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some strong ones, but
sure, there are. Definitely.
There's also a lot of not very good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my second movie has been a movie that's been on my list basically since it's come out, which is 2006's Slither, directed by James Gunn.
Yes, love Slither.
And
it's a lot of fun.
Slither was phenomenal.
Splatter gore horror comedy.
It was just a great throwback to 1980s horror movies.
Lots of body horror.
Yeah, lots of good body horror, lots of amazing practical effects. Michael Rooker was really engaging and entertaining as an actor, as he always is. Mm-hmm. A really strong first movie that James Gunn directed. I had a great time. No, yeah, it was the first movie he directed, but he had written movies before and had worked on movies before.
Yeah, no, he came from that trauma camp.
Yeah, he did.
Didn't he write and direct Romeo and Juliet? Or
No,
did he just
only
write
wrote
that?
it.
Oh, he just wrote it, okay.
And his brother was in it.
But yeah, Lloyd Kaufman makes a cameo in Slither as well as a drunkard, which is pretty good. But no, yeah, Slither was great. I loved it. And then also, one thing that's been really interesting about watching all these movies and keeping track of the years they came out is you can watch a movie that's really great and feels really slick, that's a low budget, and then you can watch another movie that came out the same year that feels like it's of a different era, filmmaking technology-wise. And that is Simon Says, which also came out in 2006, starring Crispin Glover. And that movie is just an over-the-top, really bizarre, really ridiculous slasher movie where Crispin Glover is maybe playing twins or somebody with a split personality.
Ooh.
And he, over the top, like he's a backwoods hillbilly, kills a bunch of teenagers in the woods by setting up traps. There are periods where teenagers are running through the woods and there are literally hundreds of axes being thrown at them from various launching machines from set up all around them. It is a ridiculous movie. I wrote a note here. Crispin Glover is either hamming it up or giving the performance of his career. But yeah, it was very entertaining. I wouldn't say it was a great movie, but it was very, very entertaining.
Some there's at least some fun visuals in it. Like when you're talking about hundreds of axes, I'm like,
Yeah.
I would actually kind of like to see that on screen.
It is over the top, and then there's a great scene at the end. I won't spoil anything if you haven't seen it, but there's a really entertaining scene that's reminiscent of the dinner scene in Texas Chainsaw. That's really good with Crispin Glover, and I'd say it's absolutely worth watching. It was very fun.
Maybe it could be remade.
Yeah, it could be. Cast Crispin Glover once again. You know what?
You could still do
go
it,
with
probably.
a sequel.
Yeah.
But
Simon Says again.
The next one I had was actually one that basically we saw this movie on Netflix and we decided to give it a try. Didn't know anything about it going in, and it actually turned out to be really good. It was a movie from 2016 called The Good Neighbor, starring James Caan, and it was a really, really good movie. A bit more of a thriller, but it's basically about these two teenagers who have this theory that if you go into someone's house and then do all of these things where you can remote control doors and make noises and monitor the person, you can make them think that their house is haunted and make them actually believe in ghosts. But James Caan is like this super bitter, hateful old man that is maybe reacting to things not how they expected. And then the further they get into it, the darker it gets. But it was really gripping. It was it had a really good ending. It was good. I highly recommend it.
Alexa, scare the shit out of our guests.
Yeah, but I think that for a movie I'd never heard of, James Caan legitimately gave one of the best performances I've seen out of any movie I've seen him in, and he's a great actor. So yeah,
that's one I looked at a few times on Netflix, but I'm like, I had so much to choose from. I'm like, I'll get to it. I never did get to it.
And you've heard it here first. It's pretty good.
Nice. It's one of those ones where I was like, I just need to be in the mood, and then I'll really enjoy
I didn't
it.
even know that one was on there. I'm gonna have to go check it out. Sounds good.
That was one I have to thank my wife for just throwing it on. It was really good.
Nice.
The next one is one that was actually recommended to me by another Invasion of the Remake alumni, Jeff McNair, one of the original OG Jeffs.
Did you resurrect his body? I thought.
We're not supposed to be saying this on the podcast.
I fool around with Ouija boards and all that stuff. So.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, because they're going to say Jay's going to have to go check the basement floor again. Then.
Yeah, no, it's...
I was.
He keeps doing that.
Zombie Jeff.
Yeah. Wait, but if the spirit's back,
he did show up
the
on our
ritual
horror
didn't work.
episode.
the main problem is you say, who is this? And then it goes Jeff. And I'm like, well, which one, though?
Right?
But yeah, so 1975's The Devil's Reign, which this is an interesting movie, and if you like movies about cults, it is definitely one of the biggest gems.
There's another fucking cult movie.
Yeah, it's
cult number 2.
One of the best 1970s satanic cult movies I've seen in general. It's a Mexican-American production. It actually stars William Shatner, Ernest Borgnine, Tom Skerritt, as well as a small... first on-screen role, I believe, for John Travolta, as well as a cameo by Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan.
This is amazing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. My note here is that it looks like it's a product of the 80s as well as the late 60s. Like, basically, it's a melt movie, and all of the body horror and melt special effects look like they are out of the 80s, but the whole movie is shot like it's from the 60s, so it has a really interesting look.
Huh.
Yeah, it's really good. Anton LaVey was a technical advisor on the movie. There was a reviewer, an Australian movie reviewer, named Michael Adams, who said in 2010 that The Devil's Reign is the ultimate cult movie. It's about a cult, has a cult following, was devised with input from a cult leader, and saw a future superstar indoctrinated into a cult that he would help popularize.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That
Covers it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Ernest Borgnine also claims that the movie was made with mafia money and that he was never paid. He also claimed that spooky things kept happening on set, so much so that he would never play another role involving Satan again.
Oh, wow. Well, we heard about some of those type of stories even on the Omen set.
Yeah.
When we talked about that movie. And I think we even said stuff about I don't know if we discussed any of that on The Haunting, although there was some stuff on The Haunting of Hill House TV series. Apparently the house they were filming in is haunted. The House on Haunted Hill, we definitely talked about some stuff there as well.
We did,
so if there's any lesson to learn, don't go into big houses on hills or with the name Hill in it, and stay away from the cults.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you don't,
Which
because cult movies are some of my favorites.
Yeah, well, I think I
Yeah.
got at least 5 in my list.
I have 0 this year.
I have a couple.
You know what? Actually, there was a small short list of movies I really wanted to get in this year, and all of them were folk horror and cult movies. Because folk horror, I think, is probably like my genre of preference for things that I'm interested in writing, as well as movies that I enjoy. But yeah, The Devil's Reign, I highly recommend it. Number 6, now the 6th movie I watched this first week of 31 Days of Horror was an interesting movie called Two Evil Eyes. Two Evil Eyes was made in 1990. It is an Italian-American co-production, and I'll give a little backstory before I talk a little bit more about it. So basically, Tales from the Crypt was very popular. And because Tales from the Crypt was very popular, I believe it was A&E wanted to develop a competitor show that ended up being Body Bags. But they made a couple episodes and a couple segments, and they eventually decided that it would work better as an anthology movie. This is something very similar where Dario Argento wanted to make a TV show based on Edgar Allan Poe short stories, and he hired George Romero to write and direct the pilot. Dario Argento himself would write and direct the second episode, and he had John Carpenter and Wes Craven lined up to do episodes 3 and 4. So they made the first 2 episodes, and it didn't get picked up for a TV show, so they cut the 2 episodes together and released it as Two Evil Eyes. So it is basically a 45-minute Edgar Allan Poe-based movie, written and directed by George Romero, followed up by a 45-minute Edgar Allan Poe story written and directed by Dario Argento.
Oh.
And it is really, really good. Tom Savini did the special
Yeah.
effects. Adrienne Barbeau starred in the first bit, and Harvey Keitel starred in the second bit.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
I don't need to know anymore. I'm
It
sold.
was,
I was on board with the directors, and then Tom Savini comes up, and
Yeah, it was. I think if you're a fan of Dario Argento or George Romero, you really owe it yourself. Yeah, or Poe. Yeah, you really owe it to yourself to check it out. I think that especially George Romero's segment at the beginning was really, really evocative of all of my favorite underrated George Romero films, like Martin or Monkey Shines, and really worth
Monkey
checking
Shines. I
out.
haven't seen that in ages. Thanks for bringing that one up,
Yeah,
too.
Monkey Shines is
'Cause
phenomenal.
I think I remember we were talking, and I think I saw that one. I stumbled upon that one by accident just in the video store one time, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great, and because they're such different directors too, in terms of a horror anthology, both of them have very different feels, but they're both very good. So that one was really quite good. Number 7 for me was a movie that probably all of you have seen, a movie that I'm a little bit late to the party on, Fright Night.
Nice.
Yes, we've all seen that one for sure.
yes, because we have covered that in a previous episode, comparing the original and the remake together. So just go look for our comments in that entire episode.
Is it the original?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the original. It's one of those movies just where for years there's just a small list of movies where everyone has seen them. They're horror classics, and I just haven't seen them yet. But I love Roddy McDowall, and so I figured it was about time.
Great
I
horror
really sat
comedy.
down. Yeah.
A lot of fun.
It was good. And also, Chris Sarandon?
Yeah.
He, like, really, I feel, is maybe one of the most underrated horror actors. Because he was in that movie. He was in Child's Play. He was in an H.P. Lovecraft movie called The Resurrected, which is phenomenal. He just shows up in lots of really, really solid roles, other than in Princess Bride. So
Cool.
Yeah.
And what's your number 8?
my number 8. So the first movie I started on was not great. The number 8 for me, I think, was probably my low point for the whole month. It was Kevin Smith's Yoga Hosers.
We'll disagree on that one. I really love that movie, but for different reasons. Probably for the same reasons you hated it.
Yeah, well, it's not that I hated it. It's just the more I thought about it, the more I realized that
It's self-indulgent. It totally is.
Yeah, the whole movie is just self-indulgence and nepotism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there's also, I mean, some of the cameos are good, but the more you think about it, the more it's kind of like, Kevin Smith had a lot of friends who he called in favors to cameo in this movie.
He always has.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I expect that from a Kevin Smith movie, and I love Kevin Smith.
And I'm a big Kevin Smith fan, and I loved Tusk. I thought that it's just a movie that has soured in my memory a little bit. I initially didn't mind it when I first watched it, but again, my wife loved it. So.
Yeah, it's not a good movie. It's not his best work, but it certainly is great fun, tongue-in-cheek, over-the-top madness.
Yeah, it definitely has some fun moments for sure.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it, but not everybody's going to enjoy that.
Well, I think I know what your worst of the week was. So, what was your favorite of the week?
Ooh, my favorite of the week. That's really tough. You know what? I'm going to actually say, as much as I thought Slither was really great, I would say probably actually, that's tough. I was going to say The Devil's Reign, but I'm actually going to say Two Evil Eyes. Two Evil Eyes was very good.
Take what's yours. Be one with yourself. Own your time on this green earth. Use the purge the way it was intended. To cleanse the soul of doubt, of pain, of misgiving. Make this night work for you. Now you're going to see some curveballs. Life has this way of undermining your expectations. When this happens, most people roll over. But you're not listening to me because you're interested in the easy way. You're listening because you've dedicated yourself to the right way. You're not going to meet those curveballs with a cowardly flinch. You're going to meet them with a mighty swing of your bat.
A mighty swing of your bat. A mighty swing of your bat.
All right. Well, Trish.
All right, I'm up.
Week 1.
I started off because I was like, I didn't want to do what you did because I was like, I was really scared I was going to come out of the gate really strong and not be like, how do I top this? How do I do this? So I chose one that I thought would be like real camp fun. And it was great. It was Tales from the Hood 2.
With a title like that, you're not expecting much, and the first one's quite a good anthology movie, and I think it's gotten into some cult status, so I didn't even know this movie happened until recently.
I think even the first Tales from the Hood had a Scream Factory Blu-ray release.
Yes, it did.
I think so it does, yeah. And this one, it's Keith David who's in it this time as the storyteller.
Nice.
Love Keith David.
Yeah.
Love him, love him.
He's an Invasion of the Remake favorite.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great voice.
Yeah.
The directors, Rusty Cundiff and Darren Scott. I thought it was a really good anthology. It was really a lot of fun. It starts off as, it's an interesting concept. They have this AI machine, and what they're trying to do is teach it things. So they have the quote-unquote storyteller to come and tell them like moral stories so that the AI can learn what is moral and good, so it knows what because it's the Patriot Protector robot that's supposed to like take out crime before it gets anywhere, So it was, there's all these stories with sort of moral tales in it that Keith David does. And you have, of course, the usual rich white guy who's just a perv and a creep. And then the ending is, of course, what you think it is. But I mean, there's some good stories in there. There was one with like women vampires and date rapists who get their comeuppance. There's quite a few good stories in there, and I don't know. It's good, cheap dumb fun.
That's cool. I don't think I have any anthology films in my list this year, so it's good you got one in there.
Oh, I have a few. I love a good anthology.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's really good.
Cool.
So that one was my out of the gate one, so that one was fun. And then after that, I went to The Beyond, which where I watched it was classified as horror, and there are horror elements to it, but it's mostly kind of sci-fi. There's this...
Yeah, The Beyond was Stuart Gordon, right?
No, Hasraf Dalul.
Oh, all right.
It's a different movie.
Oh, all right.
Because what it is...
Well, when did The Beyond come out?
2017.
Oh.
Oh, that's why. Okay. I was thinking of an older one.
No. So what
You're
it is...
thinking of From Beyond.
Yes, I am.
There we go. See, that's the thing. Like, these movies, they sort of... You've got Beyond, From the Beyond. I also have another one, Beyond the Gates. That's my other movie.
we crossed over at one point here.
Yay! We went beyond the gates. Yeah. And it was a great sci-fi one. There's like a void that sort of appears above Earth, which appears to be like a wormhole, a portal. And it takes place, a lot of it takes place with like kind of documentary style footage that's happening at NASA, where they're analyzing the event of stuff that happens. And they're trying to figure out how to kind of get through the portal to make contact. And there's like the fascinating subplot of finding somebody who could go through. Because they can't go through as humans because it would rip them apart. So there's this whole thing where they'll take a human brain and put it into a robot so that it can go through.
It sounds really good.
And it's really good. And this person who directed it, they inserted some primo stuff that are little nuggets, but they're great. Like the one guy who's in charge of trying to find somebody to go. There's the astrophysicist, and he doesn't want her to go. He's like, I just think she's too emotional, and it's only because she told him that I don't think the fucking IT guy should go. I'm an astrophysicist, and he thought she was too emotional about it. When all she says, like, he can't do what I can do. That's all she did.
Right.
And then they go through, and then there's a whole other. I won't ruin the ending, but let's put it this way. Humanity survives, and I felt that was the downer ending of this horror movie. Because honestly, a lot of stuff they were showing of people, I'm like, yeah, these aliens, no. But it's you know what? Even if it's not horror, like just for a really good sci-fi, it is a brilliantly done movie. And there's so much. I'm not giving too much away with this, but this one woman who has her brain put into this robot thing, like she has to say goodbye to her family and then has to pretend she's dead, and that to me is horrifying.
I just like the idea of like the brains and robots, and it sounds
like
like
a serious movie.
It is.
I love the idea of Brains and Robots as a serious movie.
Yeah,
it really
exactly.
is, because they were testing all these people. They had all these candidates. There's this one guy in a wheelchair who decides to go in, and it doesn't take, and he dies. Like, there's some tragedy in here, but it's really good.
Check it out. Never heard of it before.
What's your next one?
Okay, my next one is Double Date, which was by Benjamin Barfoot, and it is good fun. It's a British one that was on my list last year, but I couldn't get a hold of it. It's on my list. It's stupid good fun, because it's these women who have gone out. This one guy, his friend is like a virgin, and the other guy sort of kind of a Lothario. It's like Michael Socha. I said, like, I cast him in a movie the other week, and so he's trying to help him, quote unquote, get laid. And so they go on this double date with these two women, but then again it ends up to be kind of a cultish thing. They're trying to resurrect their father.
Here we go again.
By sacrificing this virgin. But it's good camp fun. Like, it's a lot of it is really fun. And then there's a fight scene at the end that is brutal and bloody, and I loved it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I had a really tough time finding like standout horror comedies this year, but
me too.
It does happen for me a little later in the month, but man, there was a couple of times where we're like, this will do. Nope, no, it didn't.
Yeah, actually, I found that
we'll get there though.
For me as well. I don't know whether it was because after you're watching so many movies, it's easier just to mow through a bunch of fun movies. But no, I did the same thing.
Yeah, I just didn't. I found that I mean, most horror comedies I think I've seen at this point, and that was a part of the problem, that there just weren't really a whole lot of good ones that came out this year.
Yeah.
And the few I hadn't seen from previous years just didn't quite stand up. But I do have a few. We'll talk about them. There's a couple that I have stand out that I'm not sure if it'll be in this episode or next one. But
yeah, that one's it's a really good one. I was going to say another thing. This is also part of my theme. You had a lot of cult movies, but I also have a lot of movies that take place with siblings.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
There is sort of a sibling thing that goes through a lot of my movies, which is very strange. But
I love doing this because we get to see these unintentional patterns start forming throughout the month.
Exactly. My number 4 was Hell House LLC 2 Abaddon Hotel.
And you did cover the original in a previous 31 Days of Horror as well.
So I figured.
How was it this go around?
It's much, I don't know how, but I think it's much lower budget. I don't know what happened.
Oh.
Because, well, a lot of it is there's a panel of people who are talking about what happened in Hell House. Then there's a few people that go back in and then more stuff happens and then they find someone else later who is in Hell House. It's found footage. It's kind of a hodgepodge. It's enjoyable, but it's one of those ones that sort of kind of fell out of my head as soon as I saw it. I didn't really feel, there's moments of fright, but I don't know if they capitalized as much on it as they could. Like, I think trying to revisit what happened there is fine, but I don't know if their direction was quite what I would have gone for. But still enjoyable. Like, it's not a bad movie. Okay. It's okay. I'm going to put it in the okay pile. And that one was directed by Stephen Cognetti. My 5th one was Deadly Crush, directed by Dakota Asquivial. Again, that's my turn to be bad names. Basically, I had porn ghost story.
What? Wait, what?
Trust me, if you want to watch...
Did you go to Pornhub to see this?
I just came across it. It had William Sadler in it, and that's the thing. I love watching anything with William Sadler in, but I think I may need to revisit that rule.
So what was he also doing? Naked Tai Chi in this one?
No, he wasn't. He was just the sheriff, the corrupt sheriff in this movie. But there's a lot of, like if you want to see a really, one of those boob jobs when you look at it and you're like, that's gotta hurt.
Oh.
Like, it looks so unnatural and painful. You're like, no. That can't be good for you.
Get your money back.
Is that the true horror of this movie?
I think so.
It's a bad boob job?
It's like, just that's, when I saw those, I was like, oh, no, that's the horrifying part.
So you're talking about the Bridget Nielsen boob job where it looks like 2 basketballs attached to the chest?
Oh, cannonballs.
Cannonballs.
Or basketballs, beach balls. They're way too big for this woman's frame. Things are not going well.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, like there's just a lot of sex happening. Basically what happened is like there was a death in this house that she's in. She's an artist, of course, because you have to have artists in these softcore porn movies. And just about how like this...
Does it have a body painting scene?
Pretty much.
They always have a body painting
They
scene.
do. Or she's always got like that paint, always that stray paint in those perfect parts that make you look pretty no matter what. You know what I'm saying? And then, yeah, just a lot of ghost sex and...
Was it Deadly Crush?
Deadly Crush.
All of us are writing it down.
I like Deadly Crush.
Big boobs.
No, for some reason, I actually think I've actually seen this. This is starting to sound really familiar. I won't be looking for it again because, well, I have
This
better things to
doesn't
do.
sound good.
Yeah.
No, lots of softcore stuff.
When was it made?
2016.
No, then I haven't seen it.
Oh, so it's like Old Man Sadler.
2015. Sorry. Yeah, it is Old Man Sadler. That's why he's not involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those ones. I kind of went to it because I saw some reviews and people were like, it's a good story. And there is a twist at the end that is fine. But it seemed to me like I kind of went to it. There was so much they could have done with this story. And it just feels like such a wasted effort. I mean, you can have a sexy ghost story movie. You can.
Yeah.
But there was a point where it really just leapt over into gratuitous. And it was like, oh, we just need another sex scene here because I think we need to pad time.
Yeah, out of curiosity, how long was this movie?
I don't know, like an hour 20.
Yeah, they were really just padding.
Sounds like it was an hour 19 too long.
Yeah.
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 Okay, next.
Those are my thoughts on that. I'm going to stop there. Living in the Dark, the story of Ted the Caver by David Hunt.
When I saw your list, I actually had to watch the trailer for this because I thought with the title like that, it was going to be a horror comedy. Oh, no.
No.
It looks more like The Descent.
It is in a way, but sort of, it was based on a creepypasta, is the idea of it. And they do some of the elements in that movie. Again, a sibling movie. A brother comes back because their dad is dead. There's this little bit of an opening and they're both avid cavers and they just find it. And they're like, oh my God, we got to check this out. And they're much more avid cavers than I would be because there's at least a half an hour of this movie where they dedicate to spending the time to open the hole up big enough they can get in.
Yeah, okay. When I saw the trailer and I saw this tiny little hole that they're trying to crawl into, and I'm like, this looks like a sphincter.
It does. It does.
Was it good?
It wasn't too bad. There were bits, but it's
like for creepypasta was like there was some pretty good stuff out there.
Yes, it sort of jumps it a little bit at the end. Like I didn't feel the ending as satisfying as it could have been. It's fine. I found most of the tension in a lot of the movie, which I felt that they really kind of wasted, was when there's this tiny bit, you have to crawl through this very little portion, this tiny hole, to get to the other side where it really opens up. And there's moments where people are in there and like, you have to let the air out of your lungs just to get through this tiny spot. Like, that's a horrifying thing. And you could have done so much with that. And they didn't really get there. It's a good effort. I think there was a story there. And I think a bigger budget, you could have really done some stuff with it.
Very cool.
Yeah, neat.
And then my 7th one was Rings.
Yeah, I've talked about that in a previous 31 days. I think last year's.
I think it was last year, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was F. Javier Gutierrez had done that one. I think my one macro note for it is I love a really, really angry Johnny Galecki. I really do. I think he should be in more horror movies as a gruff, angry person. It would make me so very happy.
Well, now that,
He's really gotten typecast as being that kind of goofy guy. He was really great in Party Monster.
Yes.
As well. He was really good in that. He's capable of so much more than whatever, Leonard.
you know, he had a lot of angry scenes in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yep.
Yes, he did.
That's right.
If you want to watch also when he's creepy and skeevy, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I rewatched that a little while ago because I was just in the mood for some 90s films. And he was like the skeevy, like kind of rich kid asshole. And I'm like, crap, he can totally do that role.
You know what? It might be interesting because now that him and the whole cast of The Big Bang Theory are richer than God and they won't have a TV show to do anymore, it'd be interesting to see what kind of passion projects they all venture towards.
Right?
Now that they don't need to make money. So
Jim Parsons actually has one on Netflix right now that is really good. We were watching it just yesterday, actually. Just look for it on Netflix. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's really good.
cool.
Going back to Rings, it's very much a formula movie. I found it's not terrible, but it's the same formula of trying to uncover more of the story. This one was about more of Samara's mother, I do believe.
It really it was, and
But it's all a ploy for her to get propagated more.
it really is. It's a
With
ploy
the
for
death
her to
of
get out.
Yes.
Yeah, with the death of VHS. I mean, and it was, I thought with the opening, there was so much more to be done with it because what happened was like, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you because this is the opening scene, is there's somebody on a plane and he talks about the tape and then one girl's like, did you copy it? And the guy's like, no, did you copy it? So basically what this guy's done is taken down an entire plane of people because he's the one who has to die. And honestly, I thought that would have been the direction they would have gotten it, as all this collateral damage that could happen if somebody's supposed to die at that moment, and that's what's supposed to happen.
It's a cool idea.
But
Yeah, but then it just falls into the
same
formula
tropes.
of the franchise, and it's fine. But you've already done that ride twice, and it was so long ago from the previous go around that it felt like it didn't have anything new to say.
right, you were,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And
That seems to be a bit of a theme for any sequels watched during this 31 Days of Horror, because you brought that up with Jeepers Creepers too.
Creepers,
There's
yeah.
One thing I've heard
Might not
that
be the
isn't
last
the case with that I really wanted to see as well for my list this time is I heard that what that Japanese the Ring versus the Grudge was actually really good. As a sequel to both Ringu and Ju-on.
Juan, yeah.
Yeah, that movie came
when
tons of years later.
I that was actually on my list for last year, and then I never got to it, and then I totally forgot about it this year.
Yeah.
What's your number 8?
my number 8 is Cane Hill. Again, stay away from places with hill in the title. It's a British one. These people go ghost hunting in an asylum called Cane Hill.
Kane is also the name of the guy who built the house on Haunted Hill. No.
No,
Hugh
Crane.
Crane.
Hugh Crane, yeah.
Crane.
Yeah.
Ukraine. Yeah. So they go in, and I guess it's paranormal investigators trying to do this whole thing. And then the evil ghost comes back with an axe. I think they're trying to create a new movie monster of this guy who was, I think he was born in the mental hospital. His mom was insane, blah, 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 comes back. They could have done more, but
That's
it was.
like how Freddy was born too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, son of 100 maniacs.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one, I think she was just insane. I think his dad was fine. Good, dumb fun. The girl and the black guy live, so yay. They got out of that trope. But yeah, no, it's fine. Again, creepy place. Stay away from places with hill in the title.
All right, what was your favorite for the month?
Double Date.
Or not month, the week. Sorry. Yeah, Double Date.
Double Date. Loved it.
I want to check that out. That sounded good.
And I think we figured out what your worst one was, but why don't you say it anyway?
Which one?
For the week.
Yeah, Deadly Crush.
Deadly Crush.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you want it, like you say, just maybe stay for the jerk off points and leave it at that. Because I mean,
other ways of finding that kind of material now, if we really want to.
A little too hard at that.
You're going to go back.
I
in the
have to
box
say,
in a minute.
honestly, there's some good parts where I'm like going, yeah, there's some female pleasure going on. Yeah, there's stuff happening. It's
something
all right
for everybody.
Yep, you're good.
Not a good horror movie, but worth the spank bank.
Pretty much. unless you're really freaked out by bad boob jobs, then it's really going to terrify you.
I am.
But for some people, that might be the
selling feature.
A selling feature, yeah.
All right,
It might be.
Sam, let's take us home for this first week.
Oh, it's been a long week. I started off with not great, like really not great. I watched Bleed from 2016, directed by Trip Rain, starring a bunch of people you don't know: Chelsea Crisp, Riley Smith, and Michael Stager. This movie could have been good, but the problem is the writer, and I believe the director was a co-writer of it, didn't know what the fuck he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. It starts off as a great hillbilly horror, switches over to a ghost hunters type thing in the middle act, and then the third act becomes satanic ritual weirdness.
That sounds a lot like a season of American Horror Story.
Maybe,
Right? Yeah.
but it wasn't cohesive in any way. There's a pregnancy that I still understand what the pregnancy had to do with the whole story. I will be honest, I don't even think I actually really understood the ending because I was mostly checked out by the end because I just hated it that much.
Wow, no, it sounds like I'm going to get one movie to make, and I'm going to make them all.
That was exactly the feeling I had. It's like he had three good ideas, but only had one movie to make them in. So it just sort of like first act, second act, third act will be the three movie ideas I have, and I'll just sort of try to tie them all together because the redneck hillbillies come and play in the third act. They're not present at all in the second act. So that's where it gets confusing, and don't waste your time.
Right.
Bottom line, do not waste your time. The second movie, for the longest time I thought this was going to be my movie of the month. It was The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears from France.
Yeah, that movie's really good.
Yes, from 2013. I'm not going to do the casting, but the directors who have gone on to do other things, and I will be looking for more of their work, were Helene Catet and Bruno Forzani. Just stunning to watch this movie. Mm-hmm. It is so visually amazing.
When I first heard the title, and then you said France, I'm like, oh, well, because originally I thought it was a Giallo movie with the title.
It's like a Giallo tribute.
It is very much so. Yeah, you've got some Argento, you've got some Cronenberg in there.
Yeah,
like it's really.
It's kind of like they take like it's like they're doing a tribute to Giallo, but everything about Giallo is turned up to 11, basically.
It really is. Like the second act of that movie is like being in somebody's nightmare. It is just visually, it is like being in a nightmare. And don't want to spoil it because I think people should watch it. The ending is one of those unhappy endings. It doesn't take you where at no point does this movie take you where you expect it to take you.
And for an avant-garde movie, it's like also strangely coherent.
It very much is, yeah. The storyline's linear. I mean, you have the start where this guy's wife disappears from a locked apartment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's very sort of straight-laced kind of thriller for the first act, and then all of a sudden it descends into this weirdness, right? And this movie sort of follows one of my micro themes that I came across this month with houses, and this one's an apartment building that has a history. There's a story behind this apartment building, and it tells that story while telling the story of this missing woman and her history. Because she's not exactly innocent in the whole thing. And her disappearance, you don't really feel bad for her because she's pretty reprehensible. I mean, everybody in this movie is pretty reprehensible. So yeah, that's the best part is there's no clear hero in the movie. Okay, so for my third movie is my only anthology, and it reminded me why I don't typically watch anthologies. Unlike the rest of you, I don't care for them very much.
I love them.
This one I did mostly enjoy. Like most anthologies, it had good bits and bad bits. It's 11 segments in an hour and a half, so they're short.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
It had 11 directors, including our friend Kevin Smith, Anthony Scott Burns, Kevin Kutch, Gary Shore, Dennis Widmeyer, Scott Stewart, Sarah Dina Smith, Nicholas McCarthy, Adam Egypt Mortimer, Matthew Johnson, and Ellen Reed. And it's got 11 bits, and they're all based on classic holidays like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day.
And it's holidays.
Yeah,
and it's
I
holidays.
did that one last year.
There are some directors on there who have started making some really good stuff, actually.
Oh yeah, and I mean all the segments were decent, but I like with most anthologies, unless you only have like 2, like Tales from the Hoods, 2, which I haven't seen, but where
Tales
you
from the
have
Hood
get
is
sort
4.
of, but where they have like hour long, like 2 or 3, then it doesn't feel quite so short. So you feel like you're getting a full story.
Well, Tales of Halloween had quite a few.
It had quite a few, but
as
I mean,
well,
they were
but
paced really well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did the XX last year and it only had 3 segments. I really enjoyed that
Actually,
one.
Yes.
one of my favorite movies of the entire month, which we'll get to next week, was from a director who did something in holidays. So
Oh, wow.
Excellent. My 4th one was The Bye Bye Man from 2017.
I thought after Trish watched it, you wouldn't watch it.
That's what I thought.
I was surprised about
know,
this.
so-
You know what? The truth, straight up truth, is I was actually thinking I wanted to see The Slender Man, not The Bye Bye Man. I fucked up.
Wrong creepypasta.
I saw
Yeah.
The Bye Bye Man in theaters, and right before The Bye Bye Man came out, somebody recut the trailer, and instead of The Bye Bye Man, they called him the Pee Pee Poo Poo Man. So the entire time I was watching that movie, I couldn't get that out of my head.
Love
They're
it.
like, you don't want to say it. Like, oh, I'm so afraid of the Pee Pee
But
Poo
you'll
Poo Man.
smell it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't terrible. I mean, I didn't hate it, but it wasn't. I mean, it certainly wasn't the worst movie I watched all week. I mean, it was directed by Stacey Title. This is my first of 2 Jenna Cannell movies because
Nice.
she was also in The Terrifier, as Jay mentioned. The whole thing just felt very formulaic. The Bye Bye Man looked really
Yeah.
good, but it hit all those tropey notes every single all the way through it.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
also, weren't you also confused how they could afford to rent that house as students?
Oh hell yes!
Right?
That was one of my questions. I completely forgot you brought that up the last time when you watched it last year.
But now you can answer that question. You see, find it confusing,
yes,
right?
like how do they afford it?
There's no way.
And I have a question for you. What the fuck was that kid doing at that party?
Good question.
I don't know.
Because she's what, 5-6 years old, if that.
They had no
Yeah, that was
babysitter,
actually
or
one of
they
my
just have
questions
no
right out of
barriers.
the movie. There's a lot of it was one of those movies where there were kernels of ideas that I actually thought were really interesting, but then also for every one of those there were 5 things where I was like, what the fuck is going on in this
Yes,
movie?
that's
Right?
exactly it.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. Right? And yeah, that was one of the things that it actually jumped me right out of the movie. It's like, why is this small child at this clearly adult party?
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because her parents don't know that you can get babysitters.
Apparently. And I mean, I kind of got the impression that he was a single dad, that mom wasn't around.
So single dads can't get babysitters.
Well, it's still, right? Still, you're right. But there we go. Number 5 was The Axe Murders of Villisca from 2016. This was inspired by true events. It's not a true story, but they took inspiration from something that happened in 1912 where these were 6 family members and some visitors were murdered by somebody with an axe. And they were never solved. They never actually figured out who actually did it. So their movie's based around this house. It's like where these axe murders took place. And it was actually quite good. It was directed by Tony E. Valenzuela. It's one of those interesting movies because it takes place in a sort of a haunted house, and it doesn't take you in the expected places. I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but it turns the ghost story on its ear a little bit, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Cool.
And it didn't trope out. It doesn't have a happy ending, but it doesn't have an unhappy ending either. It kind of has this, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of an interesting ending.
Nice.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed it. I would recommend this movie to somebody who's looking for something sort of fun. I mean, it's kind of throwaway, but it's still fun to watch.
Right.
Cool.
Movie number 6 was something that Jay watched last year and hated, but I think he's reconsidering on this one. Was Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace.
That's a great movie.
I have to agree. I wouldn't say great. I'd say it has had a lot of potential, and I could see what they were trying to do when they made the movie.
Yeah, now that I've had more time to breathe on it, I'm like, yeah, there's definitely things about it I like. And
It's just a really cool 1980s Halloween horror movie.
I
Yeah.
still hated it.
It's
Still
dated.
hated it.
I think if you took it out of the Halloween universe and looked at the story, I mean the idea of broadcasting a ritual like that, and we were saying, well, why is it called Season of the Witch? Because it's about Wicca. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's the core of the whole precept of the movie is that he's trying to tap into the ley lines and draw power for the
it's
Wicca
weird
religion.
too because it's like commercializing Wicca.
Well, I think
It is. It's really great.
Were they Wiccan or was it more like Druidic? Like
That was-
He
I think
says
it was
the
more
word Wicca in the
Druidic.
movie.
does he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, they and that's why it was called Season of the Witch because he was trying to bring back power for the witches and the warlocks and Wicca. So anybody who's confused about it, that's what I took away from it. Number 7 was Mom and Dad from 2017. Starring...
I was so mad when you did this one.
TFB, because you got Mandy.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was why I did Mandy. I'm like, fine, if you get a Nicolas Cage movie, I'll one-up you.
there we go. But it was directed by Brian Taylor, starring Nicolas Cage, Selma Blair, Ann Winters, and one of our all-time favorites, Lance Henriksen.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh, Lance Hendrickson makes a very surprise guest appearance next week on my list.
Oh,
Excellent.
Oh, nice.
I was pleasantly surprised because I did not know he was in this, because I don't look at cast lists or synopsises before I watch these movies, for the most part, because I want to be surprised. But this was probably the closest I got to a horror comedy. Actually, it was definitely a horror comedy.
You know what? It had a really crazy, like, my mind was blown that it had a Grant Morrison cameo.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Like, he's like a news anchor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. With that heavy Scottish brogue of
Yeah, it
his.
was great.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, actually. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is one of those movies where Nicolas Cage can do his over-the-top, and it plays so well. It plays so well.
Well, and him and Selma Blair, they kind of capture that kind of couple magic. Like, sometimes he gets paired with people, and I'm like, I don't buy it. Him and Selma Blair, I get.
It worked really well. Right? And I typically find Selma Blair to be a fairly flat actress.
She really nails it in this
She
one.
totally does. I was really, really happy with her performance. I mean, everybody in this was really good. The only flat note I had in the whole movie was probably when the kids were locked in the basement. There were parts of it that made me feel like they're stretching it a little bit, but they make it work. They tie it, they bring it all back into play, so you get past it fairly quickly.
Well, I mean, the whole movie's about parents wanting to kill their kids, so...
yes.
I mean, it has a disturbing premise out of the gate, so I like the
it's
kind of
surprisingly
horror
fun
comedy
for
aspect
its
of
premise.
Yeah, it was definitely...
It's exactly the type of movie you would think that the director of Crank would do.
It very much had that feel, actually. It very much had that feel, kind of that manic, over the top. You know you're watching something absolutely fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's because it was, wasn't it?
Yep.
It's not just like, it was.
It is insane.
And yeah, it very much is telling when you watch it. It has that same feel. A lot of the same like types of shots too. Like it's not, there's no question as to who directed it for sure. Then my last movie of the week was Halloween 4. Directed by Dwight H. Little.
Nice.
Donald Pleasance, starring Donald Pleasance, Daniel Harris, and George P. Wilbur.
What'd you think?
I think that they did a really great job of bringing Michael Myers back into the Halloween universe. This may be the last good one for a long time.
Yeah, I kind of like that, but remember last year where when we did Halloween and I just kept going on 31 Days of Horror, and I think I tapped out at number 5 because I realized I fucking hate the franchise.
This one's probably...
That one was one of my more positive reviews. 5 took me like, screw it, I'm done, and I think
that's really
to this day I still haven't watched 6.
For most people, that's 6 because I think 5 is just like the most ho hum of the whole series.
Yeah.
I remember G tapping out at 5, and we were going to watch them all this year because that's what Valerie's goal was. But she tapped out after this one. She's like, yeah, you know what? I've seen enough of them.
Crazy.
But so I didn't watch any more of them because I wanted to watch some newer stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that what happened with 5, going into 5, is you set up the Daniel Harris character to be really interesting and carry through into something really cool and dark.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the disappointment.
Yeah.
I think despite not following through, like I love the ending of 4 and what it implies for you not knowing what comes next. And I think that if you can disattach or disassociate yourself with the sequels, it's still a pretty strong ending in its implication.
That's what I loved about this movie is that ending and the way it kind of set up opportunities to carry it forward with or without Michael Myers, because you have this new character who's could be as dark and as dangerous. Which just seemed like a really smart writing that got wasted.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, what was your favorite for the week? I think we know.
That it was out question, The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears.
Yeah, and most hated one? Was that the first one?
Oh, fuck yeah, Bleed was bad.
Nice.
Yeah, it was terrible.
All right.
Well, at least there's nowhere to go but up.
That's right.
Oh, for sure. That was by far my worst movie of the month.
All right. Well, before we get into our second week, I'm going to give you guys a little treat. Here's the trailer for Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Oh, no, that song gets stuck in my head.
You know, that's my ringtone currently.
The ringtone.
Season of the Witch, the night no one comes home.
You don't really know much about Halloween. Halloween, the barriers will be down between the real and the unreal. And the dead might be looking in. The last great one took place 3,000 years ago when the hills ran red.
Halloween, the children.
You happen to know anything about this Cochran?
All I can tell you, mister, is watch out.
Season
He's watching you, friend, I guarantee you that.
Trick or treat, trick or treat.
Hey, Mr. Cochran, just what is the final process?
Fellas, I was just kidding.
Witchcraft. To us, it was a way of controlling our environment.
Hey!
Where are they taking her?
They're taking her to the factory.
I want a mask. Can I have a mask?
Just what I had in mind for you, little buddy. Why, Cocker? Why? Do I need a reason?
I've got nothing here to indicate there was ever a body at all.
Operator, this is an emergency.
I do love a good joke, and this is the best ever. A joke on the children. I'm glad you'll be able to watch it.
You've got to believe me!
They're going to kill us. All of us.
Stop it!
Halloween. The world's going to change tonight, Doctor. Happy Halloween.
Stop it!
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the night no one comes home. Season of the Witch.
Okay, time for week 2. Jeff Omega, you're up.
All right, so for week 2, oh boy, this next movie that I watched has been one that has been a long time coming for me. It was 1986's Trick or Treat, the heavy metal horror movie, and that movie was really solid. Yeah, I imagine you guys have all seen it.
We've covered it.
Yeah.
We had
That's what I thought.
guest Brianna Whipple with us on
Yeah, that's one of Brianna's favorite movies.
It is.
Predates me,
Brianna
unfortunately,
and Jeff McNair both are big fans of Trick or Treat.
Yep.
And Ozzy Osbourne, great cameo as a guy who hates rock and roll music, as an evangelical preacher. Yeah, it was great. It was really good.
Well, this ironic, my week this week also starts off with a movie with heavy metal influences.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, I don't know. There's some synchronicity happening there.
There is. It's pretty spooky. The next movie I watched was actually Leatherface, the most recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It was not terrible. I thought it was better than the other prequel that was made, Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning.
This was the one with teenage Leatherface, right?
Yes.
He says trepidatiously.
Yes. I'm just going to go on a little tiny bit of a tangent. One of my favorite novels of all time is a book by Stephen Hunter called Dirty White Boys.
Oh, good book.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, it's, for people who are unfamiliar, it's basically about a bunch of people who break out of prison and then just go on a spree across the states, and then they're being hunted down by a marshal. And I really, really liked that was kind of the route that they went with for Leatherface a little bit. I mean, it was a really cool, different take on a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I liked that it wasn't just another rehash, that it actually had some interesting story and some interesting ideas that weren't explored before. So for its flaws, I thought that its attempts at originality were very, very much appreciated. for the next the next movie I watched, number 11 was a movie I saw in a theater. I got free tickets to see Hellfest.
Oh yeah, how was that? That was like the horror movie within a haunt.
Yeah, it was like, so there's a traveling carnival that's basically all haunted houses, and a bunch of friends are all getting together to go check it out, and they all start to be stalked by someone who is dressed as other people who are hired to scare people at the park. So yeah, Hellfest, I actually had a really good time watching. It was one of the better modern slashers I've seen. The killer was creepy and well executed. The whole haunted house aspect of it, because the nature of haunted houses deal with a lot of jump scares. The jump scares initially that they had were good, playing into that aspect, but then it gets even better later on where they don't have the jump scares and they're relying entirely on, like, there's a point where there's a haunted house that's closed down and they're trying to go through avoiding the killer but without triggering any of the haunted house scare things. And yeah, it was a really good movie. I really liked it.
This is a movie, one of those movies where I say, hey, Hollywood's inspired by other ones, and it reminds me a lot of House's October build.
I never saw that one.
Such a good movie, the first one.
Yeah.
I know, actually, it's interesting. My wife hated that one, which is why I never watched it. But she really liked Hellfest. Yeah, no, it was good. It had some really, really solid kills. Tony Todd makes an appearance, and he's the guy who runs the whole show. So he has an appearance where he's introducing people to the park, but also every haunt that they're in, where there's an overhead voice on the speaker, it's also Tony Todd, and his voice is never a bad thing to hear.
No.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did they go, it was something, I don't know if it's like an urban legend, where they have the thing where there was somebody who was killed and their body was left in a haunted house?
That's how the movie starts.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's it was good, and the ending was very, very creepy. It was really good. I actually think the ending is what sold the whole movie for me. So yeah, I recommended it. I thought it was especially when some modern slashers are so few and far between that are actually good. Number 12 was another movie that I had only just heard of recently. It somehow flew under my radar, but it was 1987's The Stepfather, starring Terry O'Quinn.
Oh, isn't that been remade?
I think it has. Yes, it has.
And, it had maybe one of the best beginnings of a horror movie I'd seen in recent memory. It was very solid. Terry O'Quinn was a really good serial killer in the movie. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, basically it opens up with Terry O'Quinn. He has a beard, and he has a shower. He's like making himself look nice. He shaves. He gets dressed, and all of this other stuff, and it's just like him getting ready for his day, and then he walks downstairs, and it's just like a bloodbath of a massacred family, and he's like just changing his identity after having murdered this family that he was the father of.
That's quite the start.
And that was like the first 5 minutes of the movie. It was a pretty big. It started off with a bang, but yeah, it was very entertaining. I liked it. I always like seeing 1980s horror movies that take themselves seriously.
Because we saw so little of that in the 80s, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the late 80s, like 1987.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I had watched this a while before, but this would have been around the same time, I believe, that Terry O'Quinn was also in Pin, which was also really
Another
good.
great.
That's the one I've got to see. That's on my list.
It's creepy. Number 13 for me, actually, was Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. The Nightmare on Elm Street was always one of those series where I'd seen the first one a couple times and Dream Warriors a few times, and I'd seen like the first chunk of them, and I realized that I should really finish off all of the later sequels. And the Dream Child was actually pretty good. It was a lot more gothic than the other Nightmare on Elm Streets. The whole thing about Freddy trying to corrupt the mind of this woman's unborn child was good. Yeah, all in all, it was. I liked it, actually.
It's very interesting that you watched that after we talked about Trish and the whole son of a thousand maniacs.
That's exactly where that one came from. Yeah.
Wow.
It was fresh on the brain.
Yeah.
Number 14 for me was another one that I had gone quite a long time without seeing. So I finally watched The Toxic Avenger.
Ah, yes.
And it was about what I expected.
If you're watching Trauma, you know what to expect.
Yeah, it was exactly what I expected, and I had as much enjoyment as I predicted that I would have.
You can't help but enjoy it. You can see why he kind of became a cultural icon for a while there, because he was fun in his crazy, creepy way.
Yeah, and Trauma, through all their cheapness, will give you some amazing gore stuff. And there's some fucking disturbing shit in those
Yeah.
Toxic Avengers movies.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it was good. It made me actually really want to check out the animated series.
Right.
Well, you look at the whole concept of it where it's like some sort of, menschy, like kind of like skinny little guy, and then radioactive material makes him into this hero.
Captain
It's
America
like,
syndrome.
Captain America / Spider-Man syndrome is like, this is actually kind of the natural conclusion of this. It's
Like,
not as good as it is in the comic books.
It's very Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles-esque.
But yeah, it's very reminiscent of the times too, because radioactive contamination was a big thing when that movie came out.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we'd had 3 Mile Island, we had the one in the Ukraine there, where Chernobyl, where we had these nuclear disasters. So it was very timely.
Yeah, it was entertaining. So sorry, everyone out there. I had not seen Toxic Avenger before.
So you should be apologizing because of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, probably.
Actually, there's something else on your list that you'll definitely be apologizing for.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not. Is that this absolutely upcoming next one?
It could be. I don't have your list in front of me.
Number 15, Ghostbusters 2.
That'd be the one.
That'd be the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be ashamed. Look, you actually are turning red a little bit. I can see why.
The thing is Ghostbusters 2 was another movie where I loved the first Ghostbusters, and I've seen it multiple times. And everyone, as long as I can remember, have said that 2 is terrible. Don't bother watching it. It's really bad. It's basically it's better off forgotten and all of this stuff. So I figured I'll just avoid it then. But
they're wrong.
There's been a resurgence over the past couple
they're
years
wrong.
of people talking about its merits, and I figured why am I just not watching something?
Yeah, it's not as strong as well balanced as the first one.
Yeah, it was still fun, though.
I really do enjoy the movie.
I think that, obviously the first one is better, but I think it was a very adequate sequel. It had a lot of good original moments and some good comedy for sure.
It did suffer from sequel syndrome, where it didn't stand up to the charm of the first, but on the whole, it wasn't as bad as people have made it out to be.
No, I had a good time watching it, other than my wife pointing out that it's really funny how in the second one specifically, there's just all of these ghosts who are not actually hurting anybody, who get their souls damned to wherever the inside of where they store ghosts are for all of eternity. Like, it's just these nice people, like a guy going out for a jog, and they're just kind of being assholes to all these ghosts.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like that one. That's still that's third on the list of any Ghostbusters movie I've watched.
Ooh.
Third.
Wow. Third.
Oh boy.
Out of the Ghostbusters
the remake
franchise,
is still second.
Yeah, out of the Ghostbusters franchise, I would not put that third.
Yeah.
It's a far third for me. If there was another one to put above it, I would.
Another one that I actually another reason I watched Ghostbusters 2 is honestly, no, even for movies that people consider to be terrible, I will always watch a movie with Rick Moranis.
Sure.
And Rick Moranis is always a gem, no matter what he's in.
And there's a truth to that.
Mm-hmm. Even in the John Goodman Flintstones movie.
Yes, he was the best part of that movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same with a movie that I absolutely freaking hate, Little Shop of Horrors.
Mm.
Oh yeah, he's a great shining star in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you know what? Rick Moranis, I've heard that he's going to be making a return to acting, and I'm very excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see whatever was good enough to bring him out.
Yeah.
Well, his kids are old enough now that they don't need him to take care of them anymore.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do Ghostbusters because he just didn't miss it. He just didn't want to do it anymore.
Oh yeah. Well, he was never he's definitely part of that franchise, but I wouldn't consider him part of the primary cast.
He's a secondary
he said that
character.
he didn't want to make his acting comeback as a cameo in a movie.
Yeah, and
That
I
may have
don't
been
blame
it, but
I don't blame him on that either.
And finally, number 16 was actually, I think, one of the gems of my month was Deranged: Confessions of a Necrophile. From 1974, the same year as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was this Canadian-American production based on the life of Ed Gein, starring the old man from the first Home Alone. And it is probably the most accurate movie to Ed Gein's life. All the names are changed, and there's a couple details that are different, but all in all, it's fairly accurate. And
more accurate than Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
But
no way.
This movie really succeeded on a lot of fronts. It's very much of its time. but not in a bad way. Like, the whole movie is kind of faux documentary style, where there's a man in a 1970s suit and Roy Orbison hair and dark sunglasses who steps onto the scene to explain what happens. And in a documentary narrative style, the entire score to the movie is just church hymns played on an organ. And it's just about this creepy old man whose mother died, and he is obsessed with her and keeps her body in his house, and then starts digging up other bodies to have friends for her. And the whole movie is just like his descent to murder, and it's really creepy and really underrated. I'm surprised I had not actually heard about this one very much before. It was really solid.
First I'm hearing about it, to be honest.
Yeah, it was, I think, one of the... I mean, for movies based on Ed Gein, it seems that the main ones are obviously Psycho, Texas Chainsaw, and then this one. And it was really good. I highly recommend it if you like kind of slightly off-kilter, semi-serious, but also a little bit camp 70s serial killer horror.
Yeah, I think you did mention when we did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think you mentioned it briefly, but that was my first hearing of the existence of this movie.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's very good.
Okay, well, I guess that was probably your favorite for the week?
Let's see, going back over the week, yeah, actually, as much as I loved Trick or Treat, I would say my favorite of the week definitely was Deranged Confessions. The worst, you know what? I would say the worst, even though I thought it was decent, would probably be Leatherface, actually. It's probably the weakest entry, but I still thought it was all right. So,
well, that's all right. I mean, if it's not like terrible, then you're doing really well. That sounds like it was a pretty solid week.
If you have to struggle to find
where I had a
low,
no-brainer last week, that first week, it was an absolute no-brainer.
I was really lucky. A lot of the movies I watched this month were actually all pretty decent.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Trish.
All right. So it's my turn. Week two. Going into it. Well, we did 8 before, so like a week and a day.
Week and a day,
week and a day too.
Another week and a day.
My number 9 was Bloodfest, which is different from Hellfest. It's written and directed by Owen Edgerton, and it's sort of it's a campy comedy horror. Basically what it is there's sort of this, it's a horror con, essentially, sort of, that happens in this walled off area. They've decided to have, serial killers and panels, but what's happened is everything's gone wrong. There's actual killers and actual people dying. And and these people trying to get out. And what's funny is there's sort of this, it feels a bit like a video game element in that they're going through the different genres trying to get out. And it's actually like a super enjoyable movie. It's a lot of dumb fun. I thought it was great.
That sounds like it would be an entertaining movie.
It's interesting you brought up Owen Edgerton because he wrote one of my movies my second week as well. He didn't direct it, but he wrote it.
Links.
Well, this is interesting synchronicity.
Nice.
Continues.
Yeah, no, and it's got Tate Donovan is in that movie too. Like, it took me a while. I'm like, wait, is that Tate Donovan? And he's in it. So yeah, it's just a young group of kids doing their thing. It's a lot of fun. I would recommend it. Just watch it. It's a lot of dumb fun. And then the number 10 is where Jay and I coincided.
Yes, I will be talking about this a little bit later, or I can talk about it now.
We can talk about it because it's coming at the same time. Puppet Master, The Littlest Strike.
Yeah. This was directed by Sonny Laguna and Tommy Wickland, written by Bone Tomahawk writer Craig Zoller.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Bone Tomahawk was great.
Yeah, it was a Fangoria film.
Crazy.
The resurrected Fangoria, and coming out with their magazine and a movie at the same time, like crazy.
Is Full Moon still around?
Yeah, Charles Band is still working on stuff. This movie takes place out of his continuity.
Okay.
I think he was whatever the last of his Reich trilogy was being shot at the same time, but it's a different continuity, and this was much like Terrifier. I found this one really mean-spirited.
Oh, yes.
And a little bit directionless, to be honest.
It is. It's mostly like, how can we have a really funny kill with a doll? That's basically it.
Is it Barbara Crampton in it?
Very
yes.
Barbara Crampton from the original Puppet Master is in this as well.
She shows up in another one of my movies too.
Yeah. It stars Thomas Lennon, Charlene Yee, Michael Pere, Udo Kier, Barbara Crampton, and Nelson Franklin.
Udo Kier makes an appearance on my list next week.
Yeah, they got
Nice.
a newer puppet design, some classics, some new ones, and the biggest change is Toulon, the puppet maker, is actually a Nazi in this one,
Yep.
where he is the opposite of that in the original franchise, where he's against the Nazi regime. So turning him into a villain, but it kind of works. There's a lot. I was just like, what's happening? Like, why is everybody dying? What is the point of this movie? And I didn't really get to it because there was a kind of a to be continued, but goddamn, was the ride fun.
Oh yeah, it's super silly and dumb and enjoyable. I mean, honestly, I think the entire movie was hung on basically one line where he stuffs the puppet into the oven. This Jewish guy is like, yeah, let's see how he likes it. I think that's what it was hung on.
I enjoyed it for what it was.
Oh yeah, and you know what? And I like seeing Barbara Crampton. Like when she showed up, I was super
Crampton
psyched.
is still a very, very good actress, and she's aged beautifully.
I was looking at her going like, holy crap, can I age like Barbara Crampton? I would love to. That would be great.
Despite being kind of directionless, I am looking forward to more, and just more from Fangoria Films. They're just casting their next one now.
Yeah, it's what do you know what the next Fangoria movie is?
Not off the top of my head. I didn't make notes of it. I don't remember.
And that was sort of, I kind of went on to this one because I like Thomas Lennon, and I just thought I would watch a movie that had him in it because he's not your usual protagonist in like a horror movie.
Yeah, it's odd that we wound up both doing this for our 10th movie.
Exactly. I thought that we like doing the same movie can happen, but doing the exact same number of movie.
Yeah.
That's pretty special.
That was some very strange synchronicity.
Warning. This motion picture is one of the most violent films ever made. There are 21 scenes of puppet violence and sadistic cruelty graphically shown. The content and subject matter may be upsetting for those under 18, those with weak hearts, and those of delicate nature.
This cellar workshop is where André Toulon manufactured puppets. It is unclear how many of these puppets were made, though 60 or so of them are expected to be in Postville by tomorrow for the auction.
That's not mine. Don't really know how that got here.
Maybe it walked.
Hello. Jesus. Well, you definitely seem like a toy that a maniac would make.
What the?
Why would anybody create a Nazi puppet?
They're little, they're fast. Anne Frank was hiding in her attic. Puppet could find her.
Don't ask. Don't ask.
All right, what's your number 11?
Number 11 is Sleep No More. That was directed by Philip Guzman and written by Jason Murphy. It's basically a sleep study. The concept of it is what they're trying to do is they think if they can get to like 144 hours, they believe that that's the wall. Once you can hit, you quote unquote don't need sleep anymore. Which the whole time I'm sitting there going like, that's the dumbest idea ever. Sleep is great. Why would you even do
That's
this?
just terrifying to begin with, right?
Is this movie just like that X-Files episode with all of the Vietnam veterans who had brain surgery so they would never sleep again?
Yeah, and then they sell it with this dumb idea. They're like going, imagine if we never had to sleep, like how much more productive the world would be, and how much everybody would have jobs. I'm like, no, what would happen was you'd hire one person to do two jobs because they could do like 3 8-hour shifts. Everybody would be poor, you fucking dumbasses. Made me so furious at a certain point, but it's conceptually it's quite good, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens like at the end of the movie where you can see some of it. I was wondering like how much of it is the drug and how much of it is sleep deprivation, but it's an enjoyable little romp, and I would say go for it if you want to watch it. So then my next movie, which was another crossover but a different number, The Endless.
Yes, I did cover this, but I won't be talking about it this week.
which is another sibling movie, which I thought it was really good.
Cults.
Also cults. Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead are the directors, and they're also in the movie. I love this movie. I wrote down, I like the exploration of a sibling relationship, especially one where it's these two have left a cult, and it's sort of, they are completely on their own in the world. Like, it's sort of, how do you reintegrate successfully into society? And they're not doing as well as they could, because it's a very, part of it is the struggle.
Well, and one of them kind of misses this cult, and through misinformation of his brother, has been convinced that it's far worse than it actually was. And they go back to visit this cult. And this movie has a lot of science fiction mixed with H.P. Lovecraft happening.
Yes.
As there's like these bubbles of trapped time, and you will be trapped in it if you die within one of these bubbles. And it takes place within the setting of another movie they had done. I think it was called Resolution.
I think so. Yeah, you'd mentioned that one.
Yeah, there's characters that at one point they wander up and talk to that are trapped in this cycle, and what he's trying to do is get his friend clean. And that was, I do believe,
it's a section of the movie.
Yeah, and that I do believe that was the theme from Resolution. Yeah, it was called Resolution.
Yeah,
that's really cool, actually.
It is really cool. I actually started to watch this before 31 Days of Horror, and I stopped because I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is a horror movie. And then I completely forgot about it, and I didn't go back.
Oh, well, you can always go back.
It's definitely worth it, actually. I watched two, Moorhead and... Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. And that was the second one, and I actually had intended to watch Resolution but never got to it.
Yeah, I think I will just do that in my off time, because it was it's again, when we're talking about these horror movies where there are horror elements but there's still a lot of emotional weight you're trying to get through in it, and it's really, I found it was kind of entrancing in many areas.
Yeah.
And when they come back, there's all this mystery too. Like, why did they look the same age? Like, it's creepy.
For the low budget, there's stuff in there that you kind of like, how did you pull that one off?
Right?
And it turns out they're not just capable writers and directors, but actors as well. Some really great young talent there.
Yeah, and there was one note I had that I wanted to bring up as well, where he's talking about his brother who had gotten them out of the cult. And they're like, well, we were talking to these girls, and then he mentions that we were in a cult, and then they're gone. I'm like going, you know what? If somebody mentions that they used to be in a cult, well, A, don't bring it up, but B, if you mention that you used to be in a cult, you got out, you can now recognize a cult, that's kind of somebody I want to hang out with, because somebody who doesn't know, that's the problem. I want you to understand that bullshit that happens. There you go.
Yeah. But turns out everybody in that cult was pretty chill.
They were pretty chill, but you should still recognize cults when you're in one.
Yeah. When you're playing tug of war with some being that you can't see, yeah, get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
Get the fuck out of there.
It's time to peace out, go home.
I'm out.
Exactly. My number 13 was Slice, and that is directed by Austin Vesely. It's classified on IMDb as like fantasy, horror, and sci-fi, but I still count it as a horror because when you've got a mouth of hell, evil witches, werewolves, and ghosts, I think it counts. And a lot of blood.
I'd go with that.
I'm going to count it.
And a number of blood.
All right, I'll allow it.
Yeah, but it's good fun. It's bonkers fun. And again, it goes into the trope of like, which monster's the monster? And also political corruption. There's there's a whole lot of themes in it, and I recommend watching it. It's a lot of good fun. And then, lots of good, interesting stuff. Like the cops go around in a VW Bug. That's their cop car.
Now I want to see it.
Just because of VW?
Yep.
Yeah, there's Ghost Apartheid. There's a lot happening here.
Wait, what?
What was this movie?
Ghost Apartheid, called Slice.
Okay, so you've got, within the body of your 31 Days of Horror now, you've got ghost porn.
Ghost Apartheid.
Ghost Apartheid. Are we going to look forward to some other weird ghost fetishes?
I think we might.
And things?
I've got to relook at my list.
Okay, well, that's sure. I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks with you.
Exactly.
Not just siblings in your movies, but ghosts doing weird shit that you hopefully beyond death would be beyond us. But
yeah, it's I know. You know me. I have a love of a good ghost story.
Yes, you do.
Always did.
What do you got next?
I have Await Further Instructions, which it's very sci-fi, but also very horror. It's UK one. Again, siblings, because this couple goes home for Christmas. And when they wake up, they're trying to leave early because his dad and grandpa are kind of like, they're a bit racist. A lot of nationalism in the UK is coming up in this movie.
You know, the title makes me think it's IKEA, the horror movie. But go ahead.
Maybe it might be. But it's one of those ones, it's a very slow burn. Await Further Instructions. Basically, I'm not giving away too much of the movie, is they're getting, when you have the national service that's telling you something's happened, this is what you do.
Yes. I know which movie you're talking
and they're getting
about.
instructions on their television of all this stuff.
It's a cool concept.
It is a brilliant concept.
Yeah, I was actually going to watch this, and I saw it, and I read the synopsis, like, no, Trish is going to watch this. Honestly, that's what the thought going through my brain is. I'm like, this is totally a Trish movie. Yeah.
I love that.
Did you ever watch the Belko Experiment?
Yes.
I haven't seen that yet, actually.
Yeah, you covered that last year. Or no, the first year.
Maybe in the first year, yeah. I really liked
I remember
that one.
you. Yeah, you
I think there's a lot of similar ideas between those two movies.
Cool. I'm going to have to watch that. Oh, and I have to say the director, Johnny Kevorkian.
Wait, Kevorkian?
That's what it says.
I think that's made up.
That's what it might be.
Wow,
it might be his full name.
Did you know? Fun facts, bonus side facts. Did you know that Dr. Kevorkian in real life spent his life savings trying to do a remake of Handel's Messiah, but then he ran out of money, so he stored all of the film in a storage locker as well as all of his paintings. And then his storage locker was lost, and no one knows what happened to any of the film or the paintings. But one day, there might be a storage locker that's found that has a Handel's Messiah movie made by Dr. Kevorkian.
Wow. I can't believe all those words formed a sentence.
Yes.
That episode
actually exists.
That episode of Pawn Stars is going to be amazing.
I know. That is one of the best urban legends that I've heard.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Also, Dr. Kevorkian has like a freeform jazz album too.
Oh, fuck off. What the hell?
Freeform jazz. No.
That is bizarre.
Apparently his son made a movie.
I know a lot of people making freeform jazz, like freeform jazz, but talking about Kevorkian, it kind of makes me want to kill myself. If he had to play that for me, I'm like, give me the shot, give me the shot, give me the shot. But what was funny is
in quote of the week, by the way.
Give me the shot, give me the shot. In Await Further Instructions, it has Sam Gittins, Neera Nayak, Abigail Crittenden, David Bradley, Grant Masters, Holly Weston, Chris Sadler. It's a very small
Also, everyone in that movie has last names of other people who are more famous than them.
Yeah. Sam Gittins, though, shows up in another one of my movies, just in a much smaller part. So that was kind of an interesting little crossover that I noticed when I was doing this whole thing. But yeah, I would say definitely watch it. It's and it's ending another downer, gut punch. So really good.
We like that in a horror movie.
Exactly. My number 15 is Tasteophobia, which has many, many, many different directors. It's an anthology one. I'm not going to list them all because there's like tons, because they did one for like a number of phobias.
Right. It's funny. We have a whole theme month about phobias.
And that's why I kind of had it in my queue to watch, and I didn't do it during our phobia month. So I'm like, okay, I haven't. I might as well watch it while I was getting my tires changed out. So I brought my computer to the tire place and I was watching it in their waiting room. At which point I'm like,
how you make it through 31 days of horror.
Exactly.
That's right.
You capitalize on what time you have. Yeah.
At which point I'm like, headphones go in, because I'm like, I don't want these people thinking I'm watching something real fucked up, because I was.
It's when porn is less embarrassing.
Yes. I wished I would have been watching porn. Because there's hints of ideas in here. It is not a good movie.
Oh.
It is not. It seems to be like the idea was to introduce and use phobia as a basis to make a short, and it seems only 2 of the directors got that note. It seems like they'll take the idea and then just do something completely different with it. Like there was one that I can't remember. It's a fear of hair. And all they did was start off with the killer just likes to be shaved and then goes into torture porn.
And you could do something
Talk
so
about
interesting with
missing
that.
the point.
You could, right? Like there's a body bags thing that actually goes in about hair.
It's like the Stacy Keach segment.
You remember that Amazing Stories with the deadly hairpiece?
Yeah. And that's the Stacy Keach one, and there's the Simpsons one. It's been done before, and you can still have it.
I hate when someone takes something that you think would be such a good jumping off point for creativity, and they somehow completely are unable to do it.
They completely miss the point.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah, that's one of those, if you're handing it in as a project, you get an F.
Yeah, they had mesophobia, a fear of mazes, which means they just used it as someone getting lost and then getting taken out by these kind of hillbilly bastards. You could just have fear of being lost.
I got a better one next week that fits that.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
There's just, fear of stairs. I had, a lot of this is my fear of bad acting.
Oh, burn. I'm guessing this is probably the worst of the week, right?
It is the worst of the week. There's lots, but there's a few that had fear of cooking. It's a very visually enticing one, and I would like to see this concept expanded upon, where what she's cooking, but it's like talking to her. So it messes with your mind, am I just eating something that's alive?
Okay.
Fear of aging. It had such a great premise and was going somewhere, and I would honestly think you could put this into a feature if you expanded on that whole idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was a low point.
Okay.
It was a real low point. And then my final one, which I thought was just a lot of dumb fun, it's Therapy for a Vampire, because it's a horror comedy from 2014 from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And it is directed by David Hume. I think that's how you do it. Basically, it's this vampire, and it takes place during Freud. And Freud has this artist that he's having do drawings of dream interpretation for him.
Mm-hmm.
And this vampire, he's lost it. He's like, my marriage is on the rocks. We've been together forever. I don't know what's happening. He's just struggling. He's like, I had this love of my life and I lost her 1,000 years ago, and she said she'd come back in another body, but I don't know what's going on.
It sounds like good, goofy fun.
It's beautifully shot too.
When did this come out?
2014.
I've heard, it seems that out of Germany, there's actually been a lot of really good offbeat comedies over the past several years, actually. That sounds really cool.
It's really fun. His wife mocks him he has his driver go get blood for him because he just doesn't want to bite anyone. So he just gives him little Mickeys of blood. And his wife is like, why didn't you go eat? And then his wife gets the artist to try and draw a picture of her because she can't be seen in mirrors. And I'm like, that's a reasonable problem. But it's a very engaging, and all the actors in it are really good and very funny.
Right.
It's a good movie to watch.
Yeah, that sounds like one that I want to check out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody has the urge to purge. Fear is the great thief. If you let her inside, she will rob you blind. She will take everything she can. Not everyone has the courage to listen to their inner voice, the voice that begs them to rise up, to fight, to achieve their dreams. What stops them? Fear. But not you. Not today. Today, your old life is behind you. Tonight, your new one lies straight ahead.
Please, whoever you are, just let me live.
Your house has been breached. Don't be afraid. Come with me.
Because you had the strength and the courage and the fortitude to face your fears, all your dreams will come true.
All right, Sam, let's get into your second week.
Okay, my second week, this was probably my weakest week of the month, actually.
It's a week.
Yeah, it was week. My number 9, I actually went into found footage, which we all know how I feel about the found footage movies. So, completely forgetting that Trish had done this last year, I did watch Hell House LLC, and I really enjoyed it. Because this is one of those movies where the found footage works, where it's incorporated into the story so well that it makes sense. Right, because the cameras are stationary and they're filming this haunted house, and the setup for the haunted house was so well done as well.
And the concept of having the cameras for safety was an interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It all made sense, and the slow build of it too was so engaging because you got to meet these characters, you got to know the characters, and this is also where my first I call this part of one of my sort of themes for the month, is the apparitions for people who are no longer alive sort of pop up periodically throughout the second half of my month. So this is the first one that does that. But as far as found footage goes, I really enjoyed this one. And that last act actually made me a little bit uncomfortable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I was thoroughly pleased by that.
That's great.
My 10th movie, I watched because I was doing The Monkey's Paw with our friend at Book Reading with Melissa. So I'm like, I'll watch this 2013 film based on the short story. Directed by Brett Simmons, starring Stephen Lang, a favorite, Charles S. Dutton, also a favorite, and then a couple people we don't know, C.J. Thomason, Michelle Pierce, and Corbin Bleu. It takes the premise of The Monkey's Paw and the Three Wishes, and it really explores the second wish, the consequences of the second wish, where you wish somebody alive who's dead. Right? And it's a little heavy-fisted, a little heavy-handed.
Little heavy monkey pod?
A little heavy monkey pod.
I was about to say, is there a pun here?
I got it.
Trish got it. But on the whole, I liked the concept, the exploration of what happens to somebody you bring back essentially without a soul. And how do you deal with that, and how do you use that third wish? And it explores the fact that he's misplaced the paw as well. It's a fun B-ish horror that our friends at Loosely Based on Movies also watched, and I think that we'll talk about their thoughts on it a little bit when we get to their list next week. But yeah, it was one of the probably one of the better films I watched this particular week. Not a great film, but not a bad film.
Did you ever see the Amicus Tales from the Crypt movie?
No, I've not.
Like there's a monkey. I think it's a monkey's paw. There's like a monkey's paw.
It's
yeah.
It's not a monkey's paw, but it was like an East Indian, just a statuette.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it was based on the monkey's paw short story.
Exactly.
There are other myths with similar precepts. Yeah. For number 11, I watched The Windmill from 2016. It's from the Netherlands. And I was actually kind of surprised. I was expecting to read this, but most of the dialogue is in English. So you do have to read some of it because it jumps back and forth. But this was this was my best film of the month. Or not the month, but the week for sure. Oh, no, it wasn't. Sorry, I'm going down my list. I'm like, ooh, I actually had a better week than I thought I did.
Nice.
But yeah, it's set around, this actually sets up a really great sort of Pumpkinhead-esque supernatural being. And I'd like to see more with this particular being because it's so well done. It was directed and written by Nick Jongerius, starring Noah Taylor, who a lot of people know. He's a fairly prolific actor. Charlotte Beaumont, and then a bunch of people I don't know, but we'll list them off. Ben Batt and Patrick Bellotti. But yeah, the whole idea is they're on this tour of windmills in the Netherlands, which makes sense, right? You're in the Netherlands, right? But the bus breaks down outside this really old rickety windmill that has a sordid past. And I can't explain this story, but basically there's a portal to hell underneath this windmill.
Oh, wow.
And there's a being that will take the souls of people who've sinned to hell. And your lead character, and there's like two younger characters. There's a young boy, he's like 10, 12 years old, and then there's a teenage girl who you kind of expect all the way through the movie to be innocent, but as they tell the story, her innocence is clearly in doubt.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very, very interesting, and I highly recommend it. It's also known as the Windmill Massacre in North America.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to check that out.
I would check it out. The creature effects are so good. They're very brief, and the gore that's in it is really well done. It's a beautifully put together film, and it's another one of those movies that doesn't have an ending you expect.
Awesome.
Great.
It's not a completely unhappy ending again, but it's not a perfectly happy ending either. And it's set up for a sequel. I'm not going to lie to you. It is set up for a sequel, and it should be because this character is fucking fascinating.
Wow. That sounds
great. The next one, The Windmills?
It could be. It could be. My 12th movie was Seven in Heaven from Netflix, directed by Chris Egeman, starring Travis Topes, Jacinda Barrett, Gary Cole, and Haley Ram. This was interesting because this one's just barely horror. It's not until the third act where you really sort of understand the horror of the film. But basically, during this party, this kid goes into a closet for 7 minutes in heaven, and while he's in there with the girl that he's supposed to be having 7 minutes in heaven with, when they open the door, they've been moved to a different universe.
Oh, weird.
And as he starts traveling around, he realizes that nothing's quite right. And as you watch the movie, you realize that he's exploring his own fears throughout the movie.
Wow.
And it gets quite intense during that third act. I mean, he gets accused of murdering a friend in this alternate universe, and I was surprised because I was watching it going, oh, what did we pick? This was because this was a family pick, so I was thinking, can I count this? But by the end, I'm like, oh yeah, I can count this.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
pretty slick. I mean, it's not the best film I watched that week, but it wasn't the worst either. Number 13 was Terrifier. We've already talked about that. Jay's already gone through the casting and all that stuff, so we'll kind of just touch base and say that I saw it and how much I really, really enjoyed it. It wasn't the best film I watched all month, but it certainly was the most fun I had up to this point.
Yeah, for me, I would say definitely not the best for the month, but easily the most fun, trashiest, and goriest movie of the month.
Yeah, and it gave me probably one of the most interesting characters. I said, Art the Clown, if it weren't for the characterization and the performance by David Howard Thornton, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much.
Yeah.
But he
used to be a real mime.
I can see that.
Yeah, you would need somebody with that experience.
You certainly would, but he brought it, and if it weren't for that performance, I probably would have checked out on this movie.
Yeah, I want more.
Here's a question that I actually thought was interesting bringing up from Terrifiers. Do you think it cheapens a slasher character for the said character to use a gun?
No. Not
like if you're watching, Friday the 13th, and then Jason pulled out a gun, it would kind of be weird.
Part of me kind of agrees with you, but even Art the Clown, when he does it, feels a little disappointed with it. He's like, whatever.
Yeah. It fit the character.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
right?
if you're going to carry all of your tools of torture in a garbage bag, a handgun's not going to take up a whole lot of space.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you. Like, if an established character that established that they are fans of the up-close kill, then yes.
Well,
but they established that Art is not your typical slasher. He's not. There's no question that he's not your typical slasher, and as Jay said, he is even disappointed himself for doing it, but he did it out of necessity out of a sense of urgency.
Yeah,
he didn't have time to play.
Yeah, and I think I can see that. I think part of what that question raises is mostly when you're talking about like an evil killer wandering around. The part of those, like just those instruments, is that it's going to take a long time to take somebody out. A gun just seems too fast, so it doesn't seem right somehow.
It doesn't seem satisfying to the motivation of our slasher.
Yeah.
But I think they addressed it really well in the movie.
Cool.
Number 14 was Final Girl from 2015, directed by Tyler Shields, starring Abigail Breslin, Wes Bentley, Alexander Ludwig, Logan Huffman, Cameron Bright, and Reese Thompson. This is classified as a horror, and it just barely is, I think. It's more of like a revenge thriller almost to me. But it was so well done and so beautifully shot. And Abigail Breslin I've been a little bit disappointed in what she's been doing sort of in between Little Miss Sunshine and this one. But she brought it for this movie. She was so enjoyable to watch. And the use of the red dress in the movie, again, the director really wanted a certain look. Because all of our troubled young men all wear tuxedos as they go out to commit murder. Like there's a definite look, and every single one of them it's just a great performance. And there's some really great action scenes. Like there's some actual hand to hand and MMA style combat in this movie, and it's all really well done.
Crazy.
It's one of those movies.
Nice.
It's on Netflix. Watch it. It's good, goofy fun. Just barely in the horror category, but definitely worth a watch.
Cool. I think me and Trish are both thinking of Final Girls.
Yeah, that's the one I got confused.
Yes,
and which we've covered in previous iterations.
Yeah, and
of this
I almost didn't watch this because I was thinking of that as well. And then I read the synopsis, like, no, this isn't Final Girls. Sweet. Number 15. Well, I'm only just going to say the name because we've already talked about it at length in a previous episode this month or last month. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
All right.
Yeah, it's the
original one?
The remake. I had not seen the remake.
I was going to say, I would have remembered if it had come up that you hadn't seen the original one.
No, the original one I'd seen a couple times previously, but I'd never seen that remake. We talked about it at length. No need to go much further.
No, go listen to that episode.
Yes.
You got a whole episode to go for.
Pretty good. There's a pretty good guest on that episode, I think.
He's all right.
He's okay. He's all right.
He doesn't smell bad.
It's fine.
Well, after being in the box for a week. Oh, wait, that spoils who it was.
And then my last movie for this week was Pyewacket, which is a Canadian film, yay Canada, from 2017, directed by Adam McDonald, starring Nicole Munoz, Laurie Holden, Chloe Rose, and Eric Osborne. I know that Jeff has seen this, so I'm looking forward to sort of talking about this one, because I tried to make Jada watch this because I want to see if anybody else took out of this movie what I did.
Yeah, I did not get the Pyewacket, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I would recommend it.
Either.
I would recommend it. It's an interesting exploration into madness as far as I'm concerned. They bill it as a supernatural horror, but it's not. It is not. Because at no point do you really see anything truly supernatural. There's one scene where you see a shadow in her room, which could have been anybody, and then the only other thing that suggests that it could be truly supernatural is when her friend stays over and wants to leave because she's gone to sit in the car.
There was one moment, though, where there was something that was very obviously supernatural, though, near the end.
Was it? Or was it in her head?
It's an interesting question.
Because to me, when I watched that movie, because I'm thinking, I was expecting a supernatural horror, but it was so subtle that the few moments of whether it could be supernatural could be easily explained away either by her madness or by just natural events. Because I think, because there's a moment in the car where her friend is freaking out, and she says to her friend, "Don't touch me, don't come near me," which suggested to me that Angel's character, the character's name I can't remember, but had done something to scare her. Right. So
interesting.
I would like to see somebody else's take on it, and maybe even if you think back on it, maybe you'll see that movie in a different light.
Because I saw it when it was here for, I think, Calgary Underground Film Festival quite a while ago. I think it might have been longer than 2017. It might have been late 2016. And I remember just being fairly underwhelmed with it being like, kind of like a supernatural type idea that never really did much of anything of interest with its premise. But I think maybe looking back, as it's been a long time, I don't remember thinking of it being like a madness angle. That's definitely really interesting.
Yeah, because even at the end, right? I don't want to ruin it because I still think you guys should see it. But even at the end, right? She's physically responsible for what happens at the end. Like, she is wholly responsible for it. So it just, to me, as I was watching that, I'm like, this isn't a supernatural movie. This girl has gone insane, and she's blaming it on the supernatural.
Interesting.
That's a really interesting new kind of emerging that's happening more often in horror, where it's part of it is the mental illness, and your protagonist has mental illness, and it's like how much of it is real, how much of it isn't real, and then the poor person who this is happening to, they're aware, they can usually be aware that they have mental illness. They're like, oh my god, I can't trust myself. Like, that's also horrifying. You're experiencing two levels at the same time.
Yeah, and the very final scenes, I think that there's that realization there. That's why I took it the way I did it, rather than as a supernatural horror it was billed as.
Interesting.
Well, before I get to my second week, I want to share a list from one of our fans. Xavier's always...
Yay.
We can always count on him for a full list of 31 Days of Horror. In fact, he gave me a list of 33 movies.
Nice.
So we're going to just blow through these real quick, because this is a monster episode. First one up was Zombievers.
Good choice. That's on my week next week.
There you go. We'll talk about it then. He kind of does things in pairs from time to time. So his second movie was A Zombie Croc.
Nice.
Number 3 was Satan's Cheerleaders, followed by number 4, All Cheerleaders Die, which I talked about last year. Number 5 was Save Yourself. Number 6 is Summer of '84.
Good. That's also on my list.
Excellent. Number 7 was Terrifier. It seems to have made a lot of lists this year. Number 8, The Clown Murders.
Yeah, you've seen that pairing.
Yeah. Number 9, Disciples. Number 10, The Devil's Carnival. Number 11, Sam has talked about this in a previous episode, previous 31 Days of Horror. You Can't Kill Stephen King. Which he kind of liked, but kind of didn't, so... Number 12, we've done an entire episode of called Plan 9. This was a remake of Plan 9 from Outer Space, so please go check it out. Number 13 was Splatter University. Number 14 was Sorority House Massacre.
Okay.
Number 15, a favorite of mine. I know Sam really likes this movie too. Pontypool.
Yes, and me as well. I did that last year.
I love Pontypool. I've seen it many, many times. Number 16, Peelers. I can tell you was using Amazon Prime because I saw a bunch of these were on Amazon Prime. Number 17, Madhouse. Number 18, Don't Go Into the House. See, pairings. Number 19, the 2018 version of Halloween.
Yes.
Number 20, Final Girl.
Yes.
Nice.
Number 21, Grizzly. Number 22, The Day of the Animals. What is with you, Xavier?
Kudos to you, though,
but
for sticking with your theme.
Beavers, grizzlies, animals.
Yeah, I'm liking this whole double feature thing. Number 23, The Dark, which I do believe is on Netflix. Number 24, Brain Dead.
Oh, yep.
Number 25, Enigma. Number 26, Voices from Beyond. Number 27, which I'll be talking about next week, Murder Party. Number 28, and I can't believe I didn't put this on my list because I have it in my collection, Among Friends. Number 29, Chainsaw Maidens from Hell. Love that title. Number 30 was Devil May Call. Number 31 was Slaughterhouse Rock. And then, just to round it out for bonuses, 32 was Tales from the Hood, followed by Tales from the Hood 2.
Woohoo!
So
we have crossover.
So thanks to you for that, Xavier.
It's a lot of work.
That was a lot of work. Absolutely.
Under the crimson, primordial sky, the wretched warlock reached into the dark embrace. His fist closed around the serpent's eye. Strange and eternal.
I need you to get me that girl I saw. You know what to do. You're a special one, Mandy. I, too, am a special one. Let us be so very special together.
So what you gonna do with that thing?
I'm going hunting.
So what you hunting?
It's crazy evil.
You think you're so in love? I'll show you love.
Oh man, very wrong with you.
See the cosmic darkness.
It glowed from within, strange and eternal.
All right, now we're getting into my final week. And the first one on my list, number 9 on my list, was my shot over Sam's bow in our Cold War in response to Mom and Dad, and that was Mandy by writer-director Panos Cosmatos.
What did you think of Mandy?
I have a comment on here that just says insane.
Nice.
This movie is fucking bonkers. It is. There's a very slow, deliberate dialogue and pacing through this movie. It starts off this kind of romantic movie between Nicolas Cage and his character and Andrea Riseborough as Mandy. And Mandy, this is also one of my second entry into the list of demonic cults. And Mandy catches the eye of a cult leader and quickly spurns this cult leader's advances. And at times, like the slow, deliberate pace keeps you in a very kind of monotone frame of mind, despite some of the ridiculousness you're actually seeing, because she's taken by demonic bikers.
Although,
let that sink
spoiler
in.
alert, maybe not demonic.
Maybe not, because that ending, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but there's a pan out after, because it becomes a revenge flick at an hour and a half in. It just becomes, and then the titles come up. And there's lots of little nods to heavy metal music in the weapon that Nicolas Cage makes for his revenge. I think is a symbol of some heavy metal band. I don't have the note on it. And there's animated break pieces that I think are dream sequences there's a nod to the Lochnar from the heavy metal animated film, which was pretty cool. But there's this weird pan out at the end that you're like, oh, come on, what the fuck? And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but this movie is fucking bonkers.
Wow. When I saw it, I think one of my friends, Ben Rowe, said that he thought the thesis of the entire movie was heavy metal is better than hippie music.
He might be onto something. It's very artfully done. There's a deliberate color palette to this movie. He shines like these little red LEDs right into the camera to give it this kind of milkiness to it, and you kind of wonder why, and then it all kind of reveals at that final pan out that you just go, wait, what? Crazy movie. It's on Shudder. Fucking watch it. I still don't know how I feel about it, but it was definitely one of the more interesting films I saw, and because it stuck with me. I'm not sure how much I liked it, but it's made me think about it, so I guess I'm going to have to rank it fairly high on my list.
It was a movie where initially I was really struck with how it is a movie that might have gotten away with maybe cutting an hour of content out of it.
I don't think it would have changed it much.
No, exactly. I think that for a lot of people, I mean, if you haven't seen Mandy, it's absolutely a movie I would recommend watching, at least just to see once. But I do think that slow pace and the way its acts are all its act structure is very bizarre in that they're all in increasing length, which also makes the movie feel even longer than it is. And I feel like some people will really struggle with that.
Yeah, for a horror movie people are used to an hour and a half. This is sitting at 121 minutes, just 2 hours. Yeah. But if you're not used to that slow pacing, this could be a really boring ride for you, but stick with it. Just like some of the bonkers stuff they're sneaking into this slow pacing, that's why you hold on. It's like, wait, what?
Nicolas Cage legitimately gives like a phenomenal performance in this
It's
movie.
very subdued for Nicolas Cage, but when you get those moments of Nick crazy, they're well worth it.
And it's like his own brand of acting, where it almost like it's not, because a lot of people with Nick Cage, I feel like they say he's crazy and he's bad, but I feel like he's almost at this other level where he's trying to accomplish something different than normalism or naturalism in acting, and he does a good job.
Yeah, and he had to fight for that part because initially the director was like, "You're too old for the role. You just not what I got in mind." But I'm glad he fought for it, because this is definitely one of his better new films that he's done in the last few years. Certainly the most interesting one in a while. Number 10, we already know, is Puppet Master the Littlest Reich, so I'm not going to get into that because we had a nice conversation about it already. Number 11 was The First Purge from 2018. This was basically what I thought the TV series was going to be, but isn't. The TV series happens in a different purge and follows individual characters. director. So this is basically the gist of this, and this is also the first Purge not directed by James Monaco, but he does write it. It was directed by Gerard McMurray. Whole new cast. Nobody from the previous iterations show up in this movie.
No origin story for Frank Grillo?
No, afraid not. I think he didn't want to come back unless Monaco was doing it, but I don't know. Yolan Noel, Lex Scott Davis, Jovian Wade, Steve Harris, Mugga, Pat Stara, and Marissa Tomei are all in this movie.
Crazy.
Marissa Tomei works for the NFFA, the New Founding Fathers. This is the first Purge. This is the test of the NFFA to see how this is going to do. So it's only happening on Staten Island, and it's a test. And everybody who stays on Staten Island for the Purge is getting $5,000. So this is a bit of a commentary on a low-income community and seeing how it will impact. And initially, the Purge isn't going the way they wanted at all. There's street parties, and there's only a handful of people who are actually getting out and doing what they're hoping to do.
They won't be, they're doing the Purge I imagine doing. Yeah. I'm going to go smoke inside in a bar. That's
just
what I'm going to do.
Go torrent the entire discography of the Eagles.
Yeah. Exactly.
There you go. And it's very passive crimes, and some are just like, fuck it, it's Halloween, we'll have a party. And then, the murderous assholes come and fuck it up. But they are forced to get involved and throw in some of their own military to kind of spark it, and then things start kicking off in the way we know the Purges become. So it's a bit of an interesting watch in that regard, but I think it's the weakest entry in the franchise. I think even the TV series is stronger than this movie. I enjoyed it, but not nearly to the level of the other ones. And was, this was kind of the week where I was also hitting familiar franchises. So we're going to get a lot of familiar here. Number 12 was Victor Crowley from writer-director Adam Green. And it starred the returning Perry Shen, who's been all of them, Kane Hodder, who plays Victor Crowley, Laura Ortiz, who's a regular on their TV series Holliston, Dave Sheridan, Crystal J. Brown, Felicia Rose, and Tiffany Shepis. Danielle Harris makes a cameo appearance, as well as Tyler Main, Brian Quinn, and Chase Williamson. Also, the weakest entry into this franchise, I think. It's still definitely written, but they've managed to take something that happens in the swamp and constrain it to a crashed plane for most of the movie to this one location. So they've managed to make it cheaply. It still looks good. It's shot good. It's in a nice location. I like how it looks. But constraining it there, I feel like it's a step backwards in the franchise rather than a step forwards. And considering like Victor Crowley has been killed a few times, this time he was resurrected by some chant of some sort.
Classic.
Yeah, and it's very ridiculous. It has a lot of humor to it. Poor Shepis is trapped in the plane that's sinking into the swamp under these seats, and they can't seem to get her out. Nobody seems to think that planes are equipped with oxygen.
Yeah, or at least the little tubes that the oxygen things come out of, you can put it in and you can breathe out of it.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks of that.
Big flaw. I didn't even think about it until you and I discussed it.
Exactly. That bothered me so much.
Everyone out there, all the listeners out in the podcast world, if you ever have use of it, there's a tip for you.
There you go. So I'm a big supporter of Adam Green's movies, but this might have been the weakest one I've ever seen him do. So, but at the same time, glad to see the franchise is still going, because I really do like the Hatchet franchise in general.
Even as you're saying, like even as a weakest one, it's still pretty good compared to some of the other movies I've seen.
Sure. Number 13 is Canadian favorite, Another Wolf Cop from 2017.
I was going to watch it, but I thought you would.
Yeah. Written directed by Lowell Dean. It stars Leo Fafard, Yannick Beeson, Amy Matizzo, Jonathan Cherry, Serena Miller, Devery Jacobs, and Gowan.
Nice.
Oh my god, I didn't know Gowan was in it. Otherwise I would have crossed over.
Gowan is in it. Kevin Smith is also in there as well.
Sweet.
Because he was doing some location scouting, and they're like, "Hey, be in our movie."
$100 it was for Moose Jaws.
Yeah, Moose Jaws.
It was. He was scouting for Moose Jaws. It's bonkers. It's definitely not as good as the first one, but fucking Gowan was amazing in this movie.
Oh my God.
It was awesome. And come on. It had a lot of that Canadian stuff in it. And it's very tongue-in-cheek. I had a good time watching it, despite its silliness. And
Well, the first one was still pretty silly, too.
yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Totally, it's not a stretch. So I don't know. I'm ready for Wolf Cop 3, guys.
Yay!
Please do it. A lot of local talent, crew-wise, is based in Calgary here, so I had to give it a little love.
Oh, absolutely.
Number 14 was Netflix's original Apostle, and probably the longest movie I did at an hour 30.
I am so sad I didn't get to that movie in this month.
Yeah, 130 minutes, like 2 hours 10 minutes. Written and directed by the Raid's Gareth Evans, and one of his first English directed movies in quite some time, despite the fact he's from the UK, I do believe. This is a US-UK joint starring Dan Stevens, Christine Froseth, Lucy Boynton, Michael Sheen, Bill Milner, and Mark Lewis Jones. It's set in 1905, and this man has, again, gone to an isolated island where a cult...
Oh my God. So culty.
Where there's a cult, and what's powering this island and the growth on it and the economy there is these cult leaders have captured what I think is a witch. And have been feeding her human blood to keep her alive and keep the land prosper. That was one of the bigger reveals in there, but...
Whoa, spoiler alert.
I know, but...
It's like reverse Wicker Man?
It is kind of reverse Wicker Man.
It definitely... The trailers had a strong folk horror vibe.
Yeah. You know what? In a way, it starts off like Victorian Donnie Brasco, because he's pretending to be indoctrinated and being among them, and he has to keep that up. But there's some witches and torture, and it's very moody with a slow burn, almost Hammer films-like atmosphere to it. But it's never boring.
A lot of people, like Dan Stevenson, a lot of people know him from Downton Abbey, but he's he's a big horror fan, actually. He reads a very excellent audiobook of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
The performances in this movie are fantastic. This is a really, really great Netflix original. I do highly recommend it. I gave you the hook of what's being captured, but I certainly didn't give away the ending for it. And definitely worthwhile watch. I highly, highly recommend it. Oh, I don't know what it is with the cults following me in this this journey that we've gone through.
You should just become a cult leader and be done with it.
You're just going to start your own.
Haven't I already?
That reminds me, I need to talk with you something after the podcast recording.
Uh-oh.
we want to introduce you to an opportunity to really improve your life for yourself and for others.
It's okay. I already know my Thetans count high. They wanted to make me leader.
My Thetans are legion.
Number 15 from the UK. Once again, this is Malevolent from 2018 from director Olaf de Fleur Johansson.
Nice.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but I got there. Screenplay by... Oh, my fucking God. All right. Screenplay was by Eva Constantinopoulos and Ben Katai. Eva also wrote the novel Hush. This stars Florence Pugh, Ben Lloyd Hughes from the Divergent franchise, Scott Chambers, Georgina Bevan, Stephen McCall from Rushmore, and Celia Imrie. Basically, this is a fake paranormal investigation scam. They're running around investigating locations and just trying to make a few bucks off of this con. Florence is kind of the lead psychic, except she actually does start developing some abilities along the way, and they need to do one more score to just make enough to move on to something else.
She's Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost.
And kinda. They do investigate this house. The woman that hires them kind of figures out this is a con. Except there's more going on in this house. Like, yes, there are ghosts here. They're speaking to her, and some horrible things happen. It's mainly this woman who owns the house who's trying to clear the ghosts out of there because she made them.
Ooh, that's my kind of movie.
It's a really good hook.
Writing that down.
I enjoyed it. Wasn't as good. The movie isn't quite as good as the hook is. If that makes any sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
But still, not a bad watch. I mean, overall, the week was not bad at all.
It's just a really good elevator pitch, and it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it. To round out this week for number 16, another UK movie, Ghost Stories from 2017, written and directed by Jeremy Dyson and Andy Nyman, starring Andy Nyman, Martin Freeman, Paul Whitehouse, Alex Lothar, Paul Warren, and I'm not going to read that last one because it's a tongue twister. And kind of rolling off the theme of the last one, a skeptic is investigating some stories. This movie is never what you think it is. Like, it kind of comes off as an anthology movie because you got these 3 stories that you're not sure how are linked. And I can't give away the hook on this movie because it's the whole theme of this movie. It is none of this is what you think it is.
That movie is actually almost on my 31 list this month, and I watched half of it.
Okay,
and then I believe I fell asleep, and this was the day before Halloween. So,
you didn't quite make it.
I didn't quite make it through, and I think I forgot about it until November 1st, and I was like, I
really did enjoy this movie. They managed to do
the first half was really good.
Yeah, they managed to do some interesting stuff with their low budget. It was a nice return to that classic UK horror feel. I really liked the twist on this. I think we talked about a different movie where we actually thought this would be a good way to go, and then I watched this movie and I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's how it went.
There it is.
There it is.
This was originally a stage play, actually.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And then the people who'd written it, everybody directing the guy who was in it, the lead actor who'd been writing it, it was a stage play, and then they adapted it into this movie. And it's one of those ones you don't know what's happening, but it's a wonderful ride.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of the set pieces are very I can see how that would be a stage play.
No, I didn't think I had anything too terrible in this week. Probably the weakest movie for me was the first Purge within this week. Definitely the weirdest one was Mandy, and I think it could be right up there with Ghost Stories. Those are the 2 best movies I saw that month, but Ghost Stories might have just edged out Mandy just by a touch for me.
Yeah, I didn't do mine.
Oh, well, you can do it now, real quick.
Yeah, I just realized that. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't do my best. Yeah. And it's tough, because that week was just kind of like a even keel week.
Right.
I'd have to say probably, the one I enjoyed the least was The Monkey's Paw, which... given that I enjoyed it, it's not low on the list.
Yeah, and you talked about some of that on the book reading podcast as well.
I certainly did, yeah. My best, it's a tough call. I would say it's a toss-up between The Windmill and Pyewacket, but I think I'd go with The Windmill.
Oh. I really want to check out The Windmill.
Cool.
Yeah, I've written that down.
Well, this was a mammoth episode. I'm not going to go through the whole where you're going to find us bit, but please spread the word about Invasion of the Remake. You got extra content this week for absolutely nothing at almost a 3-hour runtime this week, but we hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with part 2. Please tell everybody to follow us, and if you want to contribute to the show, listen to the show over on Radio Public. We are now on Radio Public, and with every listen, we earn a little bit from your listens, and it costs you absolutely nothing to do what you're already doing, listening to the show. So if you got an Android or an iOS device, download Radio Public and listen to your podcast there, especially Invasion of the Remake. Now,
I've heard that podcast is pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Until next week, Jeff, back in the box.
No.
Get the fuck back in the box.
I thought you said you were going to let him go. The cops are asking questions, dude.
Okay, you can go home.
I'll make you more graphics.
Okay, done. You're pretty good at that.
You still have to wear the low jack.
I love how that was the sell.
That's right. We're going to know where you are at every moment, and I have somebody tailing you.
Perfect.
But he's easily identified because he's in has the mask with the big rictus grin on it.
Okay,
the Willem Dafoe mask.
The black hole sun face.
That's right, the black hole sun face.
You know what? Tying it all back together, we talked briefly about Truth or Dare. Watching the trailer for that movie, like, was there really a reason for them to have really terrible graphics with those people rather than them just smiling creepily?
There was actually a couple of people that they almost didn't have to enhance. They said their enhancement was like 5%. But you know what? I would have just had them grin really long as far as they could rather than do this bad CGI, because I hated that.
Definitely would have been cheaper.
Hated it. And hated that movie. Well, maybe not. Hate is a strong word. Strongly disliked. All right, well, that was it for this week. We will talk about our last 2 weeks next week on Invasion the Remake. I've been Jason.
I am always Sam.
I continue to be Trish.
And I am a Jeff. Can't quite remember this hole in my head.
Jeff Omega. Yeah, we haven't sacrificed this red shirt just yet.
No.
We are out of here.
People say Purge Night turns us into animals. Newsflash. Humans have been the most vicious animals all along. You know what the leading cause of death was among cavemen? Other cavemen.
Man invented fire. Man invented weapons. Man invented purge. 364 days a year, you hold the door, you smile politely, and you diligently write those goddamn thank you notes. But man wasn't designed to be polite. Man was designed to survive. Even the meekest among us is capable